Chapter 1. High in the dense jungle, a woman was lying on her side on a throne made of bones. If anyone else sees this throne, they will definitely call a reporter to report it immediately. Without him, this throne is made of a huge amount of dinosaur skull, a skull that is more than 10 meters long. The woman has a graceful figure and carries unparalleled charm in every move. In her pale golden eyes, holiness and charm coexist. However, the woman's long hair is a bit creepy. It's not just ordinary long hair, but it's made up of sharp tentacles, or bundles of nerve links. The woman yawned, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. It seems that all the special genes on the island have been collected. She gently clicked on the light screen in the perspective. Sarah Louise Kerrigan. Occupation, Blade Queen, Integration 10%, Speed, Strength, Wisdom, Psychic Power Level, 4, more levels will be unlocked with the number of dependents. Current Familia, Zerg, number 74,533, Ability, Dominate Charm, Gene Analysis, Gene Sublimation. Unlocked buildings, Hatchery, Lair, Splitting Pool, Evolution Room, Hydralisk Cave. Collecting more special genes unlocks other buildings. She was a man named Jiang in her previous life, and now she is Kerrigan, Queen of Blade. Kerrigan traveled through time 10 days ago and awakened her gold finger. Heart of the Swarm. The function of Heart of the Swarm is very simple. Kerrigan only needs to continue to collect various genes to evolve more special bugs, and then he can gradually increase his body's integration and exert stronger strength. At the same time, Kerrigan can also use the Heart of the Swarm to build various Zerg buildings. Relying on the system, Kerrigan quickly began to explore the area where she was. Seeing groups of strange creatures that were several times larger than those in the outside world, she quickly understood where she had come. Skull Island. Or rather, Kong Island. Although there are various deadly creatures and miasmas on Skull Island, these are nothing to the constitution of Blade Queen. Although the initial integration speed is only 1%, Kerrigan is enough to crush the island. All living things. Easily taking out huge amounts of dinosaurs, Kerrigan began building various Zerg structures. Now, her Zerg has occupied most of the island, and countless creatures are trembling under the fangs and claws of the Zerg. But Kerrigan doesn't want to kill them all. Many of the creatures here are still very interesting. Such as the gorilla. Talk about CAO. CAO arrives. Kerrigan suddenly heard a loud roar. Xiaojin is here. She raised her eyebrows and stood up. The surrounding insect swarms dispersed, and a huge amount of heads slowly approached the peak of her throne. Seeing Kerrigan, the gorilla exhaled hot air from its nostrils and forced a crooked smile. Xiaojin, I feel like I haven't improved on the island. Kerrigan stepped forward and touched King Kong's big face. I want to go somewhere else. King Kong scratched his face, a trace of reluctance flashed in his eyes. Kerrigan showed a faint smile and said, It's okay. I will come back to see you when I have time. King Kong nodded and suddenly got into the jungle again. Kerrigan was a little curious, what was King Kong going to do? But he saw King Kong handing over a pile of extremely well-preserved clothes. Kerrigan raised her eyebrows. It seemed that it was left by someone who had previously explored Skull Island. But she doesn't need this, her body's skin can change clothes. But, put it on when you go out. Kerrigan accepted King Kong's gift. After choosing the two best-looking items, Kerrigan put on her clothes. She waved again, and an insect queen came over. Have you seen any ships approaching Skull Island in the past 2 days? Queen, the swarm has discovered that a cruise ship is approaching the waters of Skull Island. It is only 50 nautical miles away from us. The Queen conveyed the message to Kerrigan through the Zerg psychic network. A slight smile appeared on Kerrigan's beautiful face. I believe they won't mind having one more, distinguished passenger. In an exquisite coffee house, Kerrigan was enjoying fragrant coffee. And she is the focus of the entire coffee house. Many men and women looked at Kerrigan with intense eyes, and the small note in front of Kerrigan almost took up the entire table. But she didn't care, but she was a little troubled. The ability Domination Charm is passive and is very useful when facing wild animals, but it is a bit uncomfortable for Kerrigan when facing humans. Regardless of whether you are a man or a woman, as long as you see Kerrigan, you will feel attachment and affection in your heart. She sighed, ignored the distractions around her, and started typing on the laptop in front of her. She used psychic invisibility before to bypass the border inspection of Beautiful Country and successfully entered Beautiful Country. Through a series of operations, she successfully obtained the identity of the beautiful country. It is said that it was also the credit of King Kong. The pile of clothes it gave contained the identity information left by the beautiful country scientists. Kerrigan spent some money and succeeded. Make yourself a beautiful Chinese. The Zerg are quite good at burrowing into the ground to find resources, and Kerrigan is not short of money at all. Tony Stark, chairman of Stark Group, announced that he has successfully developed a new missile. Stark Group's stock price rose by 3% again. This weapon's inventor, known as the legendary genius, received countless support. Kerrigan frowned slightly as she watched the news. I thought it was the Skull Island world, but turned out to be the Marvel world? Let Marvel be Marvel, she doesn't care which world she is in. However, the idea of letting the Zerg devour the planet has to come to nothing. The Earth in the Marvel world is the birthplace of the Celestials. Although she is not weak now, Kerrigan has no intention of going head-to-head with the Celestials. If you want the Zerg to gain more development, you have to find a way to look to outer planets. The corners of her mouth raised slightly. This world has countless powerful genes, and these powerful genes will be delivered to your door. It's great. Waving his hand, the waiter came over. Dear madam, is there anything I can do for you? Bill, please. Kerrigan stood up like a beautiful butterfly, paid the bill, and walked out of the cafe under the reluctant eyes of everyone. At the moment it was almost night, and Kerrigan was going back to her hotel to rest. She was going to wait for those guys with powerful genes to show up. Just as she walked through a street, she saw a beautiful woman walking in front of her holding a book. Behind her, there was a young man with his head lowered and his face could not be seen clearly. Kerrigan didn't care and continued on her way. The beautiful woman glanced at her, with a hint of surprise in her eyes. Peter, come on, we have to get the information back before the professor loses his temper. The woman suddenly shouted loudly. The man named Peter was startled and he quickly raised his head. Okay, here you go. He hurried through Kerrigan and followed the woman away. When Kerrigan saw Peter's face, she was slightly startled and narrowed her eyes. I didn't expect that I would encounter a bug when I came up. I wonder if he is Spider-Man now or an ordinary person. Chapter 2. A tiny bug emerged from Kerrigan's sleeve. This is a pseudomorphic insect she transformed using ancient mimicking creatures she found on Skull Island. It can perfectly integrate with the surrounding environment, and can also mimic some special items to serve as cover. Kerrigan still has it on her hair. Several pseudomorphs. Although the pseudomorphs have basically no fighting power, they are definitely good at tracking and reconnaissance. The pseudomorph quickly jumped to the ground and followed Parker and his group in the darkness. After Kerrigan received the response that the pseudomorphs had caught up, she chuckled and went back to rest. The days are long, isn't it? Another weekend, Peter received news that a large-scale technology exhibition was about to begin. He excitedly wanted to invite his classmates, especially Mary Jane. Unfortunately, the classmates in the class laughed at Peter for being too boring. Those boring science and technology exhibitions are not as good as going out for an outing. In desperation, Peter had no choice but to go alone. At the science and technology exhibition, Peter excitedly held the camera and took pictures non-stop. He didn't notice that a little Spider-Man crawled onto his finger and gave him a hard bite. Ouch! Peter covered his hands and screamed, and immediately slapped the little Spider-Man to death. What bad luck, damn it! Peter muttered something, put away the camera and prepared to check whether the spider was poisonous. He didn't notice that not far behind him, a tall and beautiful woman shook her head sadly. It's better to be a little late. Forget it, it's the beginning of meeting Spider-Man. Kerrigan sighed, turned, and walked away. Wednesday morning. Midtown High School Principal's office. The white-haired principal looked at the document in his hand with a smile. Miss Sarah Louise Kerrigan, your information is very complete. We agree that you can enter Midtown High School and thank you very much for your strong support to the school. Kerrigan, who was sitting opposite, showed a warm smile. Definitely, I am honored to join Midtown High School and I believe I will spend a great time here. The two stood up and shook hands, and the principal's secretary took Kerrigan to the classroom. As a wealthy man, Kerrigan easily entered Midtown High School and became classmates with Parker and others. However, the school also thought she was here for gold plating and gave her high privileges. There were countless people like Kerrigan who spent a lot of money to fund the school just to get a diploma and then go to a good university. But the principal still had some doubts, because this beautiful woman could go to college, so why did she choose to go to high school? He didn't bother to care about this. Maybe he was a rich man who wanted to reminisce about his high school career. This is the case in this beautiful country. If you have money, you are God. Peter, wake up, the teacher is calling you to answer a question. Jane on the side shook Parker awake. Peter opened his eyes and realized that the teacher on the podium was staring at him ferociously. Mr. Peter Parker, are my classes so boring? Maybe I should change careers and become a hypnotic ability teacher. There was a burst of laughter in the classroom. Peter stood up awkwardly and apologized profusely. After finally solving the trouble, as soon as Parker sat down, Jane came over and said, Parker, what's going on? What did you do last night? It's okay, I just didn't get enough rest. Peter scratched his head, afraid to tell the truth. If Jane knew that she went back last night and went to do black boxing to make money, the two of them would definitely not even be friends. 2 days ago, while visiting a science exhibition, he was bitten on the hand by a strange spider. Soon after, Peter suddenly discovered that he had extraordinary abilities. He had gained extraordinary strength, agility, and the ability to crawl effortlessly on any surface. He also had a keen super perception. Spider telepathy. Although he can't spin silk, he makes up for it with a gizmo of his that shoots webs. Peter has not yet decided how to use his ability, but due to family problems, his first thought is to use special ability to make money. Peter doesn't dare to commit crimes, but there's no problem with black boxing. Tuk tuk tuk. There was a knock on the classroom door suddenly. Everyone was stunned and found that the principal's secretary was standing at the door, followed by a girl. Excuse me, Teacher Sinyo, there is a new student in your class. The principal's secretary said with a smile and made room for Kerrigan. This is Miss Sarah Louise Kerrigan. She will be your classmate from now on. I hope you will welcome her. Kerrigan raised the corners of her mouth slightly and walked to the podium. Hello everyone, I am Kerrigan. I am very happy to be my classmate with you. The breathing of everyone in the classroom stagnated slightly, regardless of gender. It's not that everyone is out of sorts, but Kerrigan is simply too charming. Kerrigan stood there, wearing a purple chiffon dress, with her long burgundy hair hanging freely, and the slightly curly hair covering her chest. She looked hazy and beautiful, making the viewer think about it. The long skirt reaching the knees, revealing 2 fair and slender calves. The pair of soft white and slender feet are wearing a pair of 8 cm high diamond-encrusted high-heeled sandals, which makes her figure even more graceful. Kerrigan was originally tall, about 1.7 meters tall. She wore high-soled sandals, which made her even more tall and slender. Coupled with her peerless appearance and cold temperament, standing there, she looked like a goddess carved from white marble. People admire you. A generous gift crab. The goddess has arrived. Everyone blinked and whispered. Kerrigan didn't care and just stared at everyone. The teacher responded quickly and quickly asked Kerrigan to find a seat by himself. There were not many people in the class at Beautiful Country High School, so Kerrigan pointed casually. Just next to that girl. Mary Jane was stunned. She was referring to me? The boys and girls around him all cast envious looks at Jane. The first time Jane saw Kerrigan, she was deeply attracted. Kerrigan came to Jane's side leisurely like a goddess walking on earth. Several attentive boys quickly set up a table for Kerrigan, and the turmoil in the classroom finally subsided. Kerrigan smiled and said, "Hello." Jane didn't know why, but she felt her face heat up rapidly. She stammered in reply, "Hello, Kerrigan. No need to be restrained, I'm older than you, you can call me Sister Sarah." Kerrigan chuckled, all in style. Jane whispered, "Sister Sarah." As soon as the teacher left the classroom, the boys wanted to get close to Kerrigan, but they saw a group of girls rushing in front of Kerrigan faster than them. "Sister Kerrigan, you are so beautiful. Which cosmetics are you using? Your clothes are so beautiful. I have never seen clothes of this style before." Facing the turmoil of Ying Ying Yan Yan, Kerrigan looked calm and dealt with them one by one, and Jane also joined in. Peter, who was sitting on the other side of Jane, felt a little uncomfortable. He was originally very happy to have the girl he liked sitting next to him, but for some reason, he always felt a sense of crisis when Kerrigan came. Soon, the news spread throughout Midtown High School that there was a super beautiful transfer student in Peter's class. The strong rugby players wanted to show off their physiques in front of this charming lady, but they were directly overwhelmed by countless girls. The girls shouted in unison that Kerrigan's eyes must not be stained by filthy boys, and they spontaneously formed a Kerrigan support club. Kerrigan smiled slightly, not objecting to this behavior. As a king, shouldn't it be appropriate to have a lot of support? Lunchtime. Kerrigan quickly became good friends with Jane and others, and they ate together. Jane doesn't know what's wrong with herself to have such strong curiosity and yearning for Kerrigan. In order to show off in front of Kerrigan, she began to talk endlessly about the project she had started with the professor. Project? We are still high school students. Isn't it too early to participate in this? Kerrigan asked suspiciously after hearing this. It's getting late, Sister Sarah, let me tell you, we are participating in a very great project. Chapter 3. Kerrigan became interested. Although she heard Jane and others talking about sending materials to the professor last night, she really didn't take it to heart. Jane became even more excited when she saw that Kerrigan was interested in listening. Sister Sarah, you don't know. Our school has a visiting professor named Ham Smith. He comes to the school to give lectures from time to time. Because I did well in biology, I was accepted as a student by the professor. The professor said that as long as the subject once completed, he will directly invite me to study at Imperial University. Oh? What topic? Kerrigan asked with interest. I don't know the specifics, but it's about human biology. The content of the subject is actually very large. We high school students will definitely not be able to complete all the subjects. I heard from the professor that we are actually responsible for a smaller part of the subject, but even if it is the smaller parts are also amazing. Jane chuckled. The professor said that there is actually a super large company behind this project that is funding the experiment. He is going to take us to that company when there is new progress in the project, and we may be able to join that big company in the future. I see. Kerrigan nodded slightly and calmly placed a pseudomorphic insect on Jane's body. She really wanted to know what topic the Professor Jiang mentioned was busy with. Since it was studying human biology, it might also be useful to the Zerg. Late at night, Peter climbed out of the door and window, and after making sure no one noticed him, he put on his hood and flew into the night sky. He walked all the way to the door of a nightclub and waved his pass at the door. Entering the nightclub, bypassing the noisy crowd above, Peter made his way to the basement. It's noisier here than above. In an iron cage, two burly men were violently colliding with each other, making a violent noise. The audience outside the cage cheered in unison. Hit him and poke him in the eye. Hit him hard. At this moment, the clashing muscles, the sweat, the roaring, and waving banknotes formed an extremely distorted picture. On the other side, Kerrigan was watching TV in the hotel with a trace of disdain in her eyes. The tactics without any skills are extremely ugly. Soon, it was Peter's turn. Spider Boy's reputation has already become famous in this underground boxing gym, and many people come to watch boxing just because of him. Peter won the victory effortlessly, but after several battles, he still suffered some minor injuries and bled a little. When he wasn't paying attention, a few drops of his blood disappeared into thin air. Kerrigan gets good news from the mimics. Peter's blood is already available. Kerrigan showed a satisfied smile. It's really simple. You can come back. I would like to see what interesting discoveries will be made about Spider-Man's genes. At the command, the mimic jumped off Peter quickly, blended into the crowd and disappeared. Within 10 minutes, the mimic returned to Kerrigan's room. It spat out a few drops of blood, and Kerrigan's hand gently touched the blood. Acquire special genes, nuclear radiation spider gene fragments, integration increased to 10.1%. Yes, very good genes, but Peter is the chosen one to become Spider-Man. Under normal circumstances, his body will definitely be riddled with holes and suffer from excessive blood loss because his body cannot handle the genetic mutation. Die. Kerrigan nodded with satisfaction. Queen, I have sent back the genetic information. Skull Island is going to start trying to copy genes and integrate experiments. Do you understand? Through the Zerg psychic network, the Zerg Queen quickly responded. As you command, Queen. Kerrigan nodded with satisfaction. Although the integration provided by Spider-Man was not much, it was enough. Mary Jane's home. Although it was already late at night, she was still awake. The professor sent some new questions over, and she was staying up late to deal with them. The coffee next to her was already cold, but Jane still drank it without caring. Hey, I'm finally done with it. I'll just leave it to the professor tomorrow. Rubbing her sore eyes, Jane stretched. I really don't know what this project is about and why I am asked to analyze leech gene fragments. Yawning, Jane continued working. Leech. Kerrigan frowned slightly in the hotel. She thought for a moment, got up and walked out of the hotel. Driving all the way to the outskirts, Kerrigan found a relatively remote location, released a few pseudomorphs as a warning, and opened the heart of the swarm. To build a hatchery, I need some Zerg activity. Following her order, a lump of meat began to form on the ground, and it soon took shape into a hatchery. Originally, Kerrigan did not plan to establish a sub-base on land. The goal was too big, and there were all kinds of monsters and monsters in the Marvel world, which might cause unnecessary trouble. But now she is becoming more and more interested in the topics studied by Professor Jiang. It is difficult to obtain more information with just the few pseudomorphs in her hand. Moreover, Kerrigan doesn't like to do it herself and rely on the Zerg. Naturally, we need to arrange for the Zerg to be the vanguard. However, as soon as the first larva jumped out of the hatchery, Kerrigan was keenly aware of inexplicable fluctuations around her. She condensed her expression and turned to look behind her. An orange circle of light appeared, and a bald woman slowly walked out of the circle of light. Kerrigan's eyes narrowed slightly, and sure enough, the Ancient One magician appeared. "Hello fellow traveler from Otherworld." The Ancient One walked out of the portal and looked at Kerrigan with a calm and peaceful expression. "I am the magician Ancient One, the guardian of Tyranstar. What do you want to do?" Ancient One glanced at the hatchery, his expression fluctuating slightly. Kerrigan raised the corners of her mouth slightly. "As you can see, open a sub-base." Kerrigan was not doubtful that the Ancient One knew that she was a visitor from Otherworld. This magician held the time gem, and by traveling to the future, his appearance was definitely not on the timeline of this world. The Ancient One stared at Kerrigan silently for a long time and said, "May I know why you came to this world?" "Well, you can think I'm here for a trip," Kerrigan said calmly. Ancient One narrowed his eyes, "But I feel endless hunger and desire from the buildings you built and these creatures." "Don't worry, the Zerg are not invaders of this world. They are all well behaved." Kerrigan touched the shell of the larva next to her. "As long as I'm here." Ancient One nodded slowly. "Zerg? A very appropriate name. Well, I hope you can take good care of your Zerg. Since you have come to this world, please do your duty as a guest and don't cause trouble." "Oh." Kerrigan's expression changed when she heard this. "Who do you think you are?" As a king, Kerrigan never knew what it meant to bow her head, and the Ancient One's posture made her very unhappy. The Ancient One smiled and said, "I am the Asgardian of this world, and I will never allow any abnormal situations to happen." Chapter 4. Kerrigan sneered disdainfully. "So, respected magician, guardian of the Blue Star, have you forgotten where your power comes from? Or maybe you have been aloof for so long that you have forgotten the meaning of respect." Hearing this, Ancient One was shocked. This visitor from Otherworld seems to know something. She was about to deduce something, but she found Kerrigan suddenly opened her arms, a pair of bone wings spread out, her clothes changed into her fighting posture, the link bundle on her head was flying, and the golden light in her beautiful eyes was shining brightly. "Bold. The person in front of you is the Blade Queen of the Zerg." After seeing Kerrigan's true form, Ancient One's pupil shrank. She narrowed her eyes, then bowed slowly. "I thought you were a traveler who entered this world by mistake. I didn't expect you to be the king of your race. I apologize for my rudeness." Kerrigan raised her lips and said, "That's about right." Although her strength is definitely not as strong as the Ancient One who can directly talk to Odin, she can't lose even if she loses. "Her Majesty Queen Blade, although I don't know why you came to our world, please and your Zerg do not cause disaster in this world." Ancient One said slowly. "Is this a request?" Kerrigan said calmly. "Yes." Ancient One lowered his head and said. The ability that Kerrigan showed just now made the Ancient One secretly frightened. Besides, she didn't know how much power the Zerg had behind Kerrigan. It didn't matter if she lowered her head in front of such a strong person. "Very good, I agree to your request. Don't worry, I have no interest in this world. I am just traveling temporarily. My Zerg is just to collect some special genes." Kerrigan raised her hand, and the worker bees on her side quickly burrowed into the forest and began to search for various biomass. "Unless there are special circumstances, the Zerg will not go out. You can rest assured. As a guest, I have no interest in making the host's house a mess." Ancient One nodded. "If your Majesty is interested, you can come to the Himalayas to chat with me at any time. I think we will have a lot to talk about." Kerrigan smiled slightly. If I am free, I will go. Maybe I can solve a little trouble for you. The Ancient One was stunned for a moment, then smiled, yes, maybe. Then, I will take my leave, Your Majesty. Please. Ancient One walked back into that circle of light. After Kerrigan waited for the aperture to disappear, she nodded slightly, you have to increase your integrity quickly, otherwise it's hard to say if you meet her next time. You can't be an enemy of her now. But the teleportation magic is really a good ability. Maybe it can be used against her. Ancient One comes here for advice. The Marvel world has many power systems, and Kerrigan is also very interested in these power systems. Before the integration degree reaches 100%, she cannot lead the insect swarm to carry out collective time and space teleportation, and the magic door of the Ancient One allows Kerrigan to lead the large core to move before the integration degree reaches 100%. After dealing with the matter on the Ancient One, Kerrigan began to focus on her hatchery again. With the hard work of the larvae, a large amount of biomass was quickly collected, and Kerrigan began to build various Zerg buildings one by one. Unfortunately, the tunnel worms require a higher level Zerg base to create, so Kerrigan can only arrange for worker bees to work harder first. She trained a new insect queen, this sub-base must be hidden. From now on, you will operate underground. If necessary, I will call you at any time and arrange for the worker bees to establish a network of channels underground in New York to facilitate dispatch at any time. As you command, Queen. Also, we need to start studying countermeasures against satellites and other detection methods, and I will transmit the relevant data. After explaining everything and watching a bunch of Zerg buildings sink into the ground, Kerrigan nodded with satisfaction and drove back to the hotel. The relationship between Jane and Kerrigan has grown by leaps and bounds, and the two have become good friends who talk about everything. However, Peter's dissatisfaction with Kerrigan became more and more intense, and Kerrigan was keenly aware of this. She was too lazy to pay attention to this. The little bug now was just a brat. In the evening, after Kerrigan said goodbye to Jane, the pseudomorph reported that Jane had gone to a research institute. Kerrigan leaned elegantly on the sofa and narrowed her eyes slightly, well. Then I can know what Jane's professor is doing. Jane held the folder and walked among a group of researchers wearing white coats. She went straight to the office on the top floor of the institute and knocked on the door. Professor Smith, it's me, Mary Jane, I sent the information. The door opened, and a white-haired old man received Jane with a smile. Oh, my good student, you are really amazing. Your speed is much faster than those drunkards. Jane showed a shy smile, Professor, you have given me the award. Not at all. You have to know that our team is the fastest progressing on the entire project. It all depends on you. The professor smiled and poured a cup of hot coffee for Jane. In a few days, you and Peter will prepare and come with me to the company. It said that awards will be awarded to both of you. Real. Jane is overjoyed, she can finally know the true face of the company. Jane didn't notice that a small bug quietly crawled down from her hair, and then merged with the entire office. After Jane left, Professor Smith opened the computer with a relaxed expression and entered a series of instructions. A login page appeared. The professor expertly entered his account number and password, and then a pattern appeared. It was a pattern that looked like an umbrella, red and white. He didn't expect that there was another pair of eyes looking at the pattern in this room. Kerrigan stood up suddenly in the hotel. Umbrella. It turns out that this world is not only the Marvel world, but a collection of American comic worlds. It is clear, then, what Professor Smith is working on. T-virus. The corners of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. Interesting, so interesting. A complete world of treasures. However, it's not okay to let the umbrella cause any kind of biological crisis. It's best to control the umbrella in your own hands. When she checked the information, she couldn't find any information related to the umbrella company. It seemed that they were hiding it. Kerrigan tapped her fingers on the table. We must first find the base of the umbrella, and then control all the personnel. These guys are probably hiding underground. Let's arrange for the Zerg to search for them. The next day, Kerrigan was chatting and laughing with Jane as usual. She didn't notice that Peter on the side looked at her with an increasingly unhappy look. Peter looked at the two of them and silently made a decision. There was a physical education class this morning. Kerrigan and others changed into sportswear and went to the playground. As soon as the teacher announced free time, Kerrigan was ready to go back to the classroom. She was not interested in doing any sports. However, Peter stopped Kerrigan. Is something wrong? Kerrigan frowned slightly. Peter took a deep breath. Kerrigan, can you stay away from Jane in the future? Chapter 5. Oh. Kerrigan smiled, are you begging me? Upon hearing this, Peter frowned and looked more serious. No, I'm warning you. Warn. The dispute between the two quickly attracted other students. Jane also came over. She was a little at a loss. She saw her two good friends suddenly quarreling, and she didn't even know why they were quarreling. Seeing everyone approaching, Peter's face twitched. He had planned to warn Kerrigan quietly, but now he had to use force. Kerrigan suddenly laughed, so wildly that she almost couldn't stand upright. Why are you laughing? Seeing Kerrigan's expression, Peter was very annoyed. I'm laughing at you for not overestimating your abilities, boy, who do you think you are? Kerrigan put away her smile and turned cold. Originally thinking that Peter was just a kid, Kerrigan didn't want to pay much attention to him. Moreover, now that Spider-Man's genes have been obtained, Kerrigan didn't want to pay much attention to him. Unexpectedly, this kid actually dared to threaten me? It seems that with the super ability, this kid is a little crazy and can't find his way. I am. Peter just spat out two words and suddenly retracted them. He clenched his fists and twisted his face. Don't worry about who I am, I'm telling you, if you don't stay away from Jiang, I will give you a good look. Peter swung his fist suddenly, trying to punch Kerrigan. The students around him were shocked because Peter's movements were so fast. Oh my god, why did Peter's speed change so fast? Isn't he an athletic idiot? Hearing these comments, Peter chuckled inwardly. According to his expectations, the petite-looking Kerrigan would definitely scream in fright. Without thinking, Kerrigan raised a finger lightly and blocked her fist in front of her face, unable to move at all. Peter's eyes widened. How could this be possible? He can knock over a strong man weighing hundreds of pounds with just one punch. The crowd of people watching also took a breath. Is this your confidence? Kerrigan smiled evilly, and then whipped her right leg, knocking Peter over. She stepped on Peter's chest and raised her head proudly. Boy, listen, I have no interest in playing around with a brat like you. Let's all be good classmates. I won't care about your rude behavior. If you do it again, I will break your legs. Get out of here. After that, she kicked Peter over 10 meters and walked away. The classmates around him quickly helped Peter up and asked about his condition. Peter, who was helped up, was stunned, not knowing what happened. Jane rushed up. Peter, are you okay? What happened to you and Sister Sarah? Seeing Jane, Peter felt a surge of anger in his heart for some reason. You don't have to worry about it. He pushed everyone away and quickly left the playground. The students looked at each other in shock. The incident happened suddenly, and no one knew what happened. However, they were quickly impressed by Kerrigan's display of strength. I didn't expect Kerrigan to be so strong. I didn't even notice Peter's speed just now, and she blocked it with one finger. Chinese Kung Fu. I don't know, Sister Sarah is so handsome, I want to ask her for advice. Ignoring the disturbing classmates, Jane came to the classroom anxiously. Kerrigan was sitting elegantly in her seat, dozing off. Sister Sarah, what happened just now? Hearing Jane's question, Kerrigan did not open her eyes. Your little boyfriend thinks that I have taken his position and wants to threaten me to stay away from you. Ah. Jiang waved her hands and said, Sister Sarah, you misunderstood. Peter and I are just ordinary friends, and I didn't expect that Peter would have such a big misunderstanding of you, Sister Sarah. I apologize to you for him. Jane herself didn't know why she was so eager to explain her relationship with Peter. Kerrigan waved her hand nonchalantly, it doesn't matter. It's just a teenager's anger, but that kid's strength is indeed pretty good. Hearing this, Jane was extremely confused. Peter, is he not weak? But he is obviously an athletic idiot. Kerrigan stood up and patted Jane's cheek. Silly girl, Peter is not as cowardly as you look. You have all been deceived by him. Jane frowned and began to think about Peter's recent behavior. It seems, since he came back from the technology exhibition last time, he has become very confident, so Jane has been treating him differently recently. Jane took a deep breath. Okay, I will ask Peter to find out. Jane found Peter in the school park. Peter was sitting on the stone bench with a dejected look on his face, not knowing what he was thinking. Peter, Sister Sarah said that your strength is not weak. Tell me, what are you hiding from me? Jane frowned at Peter. What she hated most was deception. Originally, Peter was still feeling frustrated that he had lost face in front of his classmates. Now that Jane was here, the first thing he asked was to question himself. This made Peter, who had recently gained ability and was somewhat arrogant, even more angry. Humph, what's there to say? Yes, I'm hiding it from you, I'm very powerful now. He slapped the stone pillar beside him so hard that it almost collapsed. Are you satisfied with this answer? Jane's eyes were shocked, but she also lost her temper. I really didn't expect you to be such a person. Let me tell you, Sister Sarah and I have nothing to do with each other, but your attitude today made me very angry. Don't do that in the future. Come to me. After that, Jane turned and left. As soon as she turned around, Jane felt tears pouring out of her eyes unconsciously. I thought Peter was a good person, but he turned out to be such a guy. I had intended to date him before, but now it seems that I am just blind. She ran away quickly. Peter stretched out his hand, wanting to keep it, but he put it down feebly. Kerrigan. Peter punched the stone table in front of him hard. I won't let you go. Kerrigan was about to go to lunch when she saw Jane rushing into the classroom. She hugged Kerrigan and cried, Sister Sarah, Peter really lied to me. Kerrigan quickly comforted her, okay, don't cry. If you have any questions, Sister Sarah will help you with advice. The two came to the restaurant and found a secluded spot. What are you thinking about now? Jane adjusted her breathing. Isn't Peter just conceited because he is strong? I am stronger than him. Oh. A flash of thought flashed in Kerrigan's eyes, really? Jane clenched her little fist. He thinks he is strong, then I will defeat him completely in the place where he thinks he is strong. Very well, maybe. I can help you achieve your wish. Kerrigan chuckled, however, power comes with a price. You are too excited now, so think about it and contact me. The progress on Skull Island is very fast. The copying of the Spider-Man gene has been basically completed, and new bugs are also being developed. It wouldn't be difficult for Kerrigan to create a female Spider-Man. A smile flashed in Kerrigan's eyes. Since this world is so interesting, it would be nice to add a little more fun. She quickly requested to improve Spider-Man's genes through the Zerg psychic network to remove the risk. Chapter 6. Before Jane could get an answer, Kerrigan received new news. Something happened to Peter's uncle. Peter took 2 days off to deal with his uncle's funeral. Then, Kerrigan saw in the newspaper the so-called Spider-Man, a vigilante operating at night in New York and Vietnam. Sister Sarah, are you watching this Spider-Man too? Jane came over and said, I heard that the boys all admire this Spider-Man. He seems to be amazing. The corner of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. It's amazing. He stays up late at night and punishes evil and promotes good. He must be very lack of energy during the day. It would be great if I could be as strong as Spider-Man. Then I could also be a hero who punishes evil and promotes good, and let Peter fall in love with me. A trace of yearning flashed in Jane's eyes. She suddenly plucked up the courage. Sister Sarah, I've thought about it, I also want to gain strength. Very well, come with me to a place after school. Kerrigan smiled with satisfaction. Jane followed Kerrigan cautiously. Although Jane's family is considered middle class, it is unheard of for her to directly book a super suite in the most luxurious hotel in New York. Sit. Kerrigan motioned for Jane to sit down. She brought the newspaper again, pointed to Spider-Man on the newspaper and said, Do you know who Spider-Man is? How could I know? Jane is a little curious, why does Sister Sarah mention Spider-Man? But Kerrigan turned on the TV. Inside is a video. Spider-Man quickly shuttled through the building, and then jumped to the top of a building. He took off his mask and picked up a can of beer from beside him. Jane's eyes widened. This, how is this possible? Peter is Spider-Man. I got this through special means. This is what this kid relies on. As a Spider-Man, he must be extremely conceited. After all, he is now a Superman. Kerrigan chuckled and said, Now, do you still plan to gain power? Jane looked at Peter sitting on the rooftop on the TV and took a deep breath. No, sister, even if Peter is Spider-Man, I will never admit defeat. Yes, I have a way for you to also gain the power of Spider-Man, but is there a price? Kerrigan took out a tube of reagent and pushed it to Jane, her voice filled with endless charm. Drink it, and I will tell you the price. You can also choose to give up. I will make you forget what you see now and become an ordinary person again. This world is so interesting. Kerrigan doesn't want to be a tool just to improve integration. Wouldn't it be better to have a little fun? Jane looked at the reagent and licked her lips. Sister Sarah, who are you? Kerrigan smiled slightly, showing off her charm. Drink it, and you will be qualified to know. Jane's hands kept shaking, and she couldn't calm down after looking at the reagent for a long time. Finally, she picked up the reagent and drank it in one gulp. It tastes pretty good, strawberry. I know you like strawberries, so I specially prepared this flavor. Kerrigan stretched out her hand, and the door and window were suddenly sealed tightly. Then, her whole body began to glow with light, an exoskeleton armor was revealed, her bone wings opened wide, and her eyes glowed with dazzling light. Mary Jane, in front of you is the Queen of the Zerg, Blade Queen Kerrigan, and the price for your power is to be loyal to me wholeheartedly, do you understand? Looking at the extremely dazzling Kerrigan, Jane opened her eyes wide, and then slowly fell to her knees. Your will is my direction, Queen. Not long after sending Jane away, Kerrigan received good news from the Queen of the New York Underground base. They discovered the base of the Umbrella. Kerrigan put on casual clothes and took a car to Times Square in the center of New York City. She was a little surprised. She really didn't expect that the Umbrella New York base was actually underground in New York Times Square. Is this considered hiding out in the city? The Nidus worms reported that the base was surrounded by alloy. Although it could be chewed through, it would definitely alert the protective umbrella, so Kerrigan decided to see if there was any way to find their exit. The night is getting darker, but the noisy Times Square is still bustling with people. Kerrigan searched around and found no place that might be the exit of the Umbrella base. After thinking about it, she decided to leave a few bugs behind and go back to wait for news. On the other side, Mary Jane, who had just returned home, felt a little uncomfortable. It feels like something is growing on my fingers. She looked at her fingers carefully and found that there were traces of black hair. To say hair is probably inappropriate, it looks more like tentacles? At first, Jane thought she had encountered some kind of fur ball, but when she found that the tentacles could not be removed, she was instantly frightened. She jumped up and hit her head on the ceiling. The noise alerted Jane's parents. Baby, what's going on? It's okay, I accidentally fell. Jane quickly sent her parents away. Then, she felt as if something was about to burst out of the veins in her right hand. Jane raised her hand, and a white shadow spurted out, forming a silk screen. This is... Jane looked at the screen and licked her lips. As a top student in biology, she quickly determined that the silk webs she spewed were no different from those spewed by spiders, but were much more terrifying in strength and stickiness. Jane thought again of the tentacles on her fingers. She tries to climb the wall. Like a spider, Jane can easily climb and stop on walls. It's incredible, Sister Sarah, no, the Queen really gave me ability. Jane climbed down from the wall tremblingly. Then she was so excited that she almost screamed. Just when she wanted to jump to express her joy, she suddenly remembered that she almost had an accident when she jumped just now. Although I have the ability, I still don't know how to control this power. I have to learn to control it first. Jane suppressed the joy in her heart, and then began to experiment with her ability. She looked at the opening on her wrist and felt that it was too embarrassing to spray spider webs from the blood vessels. After a brief thought, I started to do it myself. The next morning, when Kerrigan arrived at school, she saw Jane greeting her with dark circles under her eyes. Jane, what are you doing? Jane lowered her head in embarrassment. That I didn't sleep well, it's okay. It's not that Jane didn't sleep well, she didn't sleep at all. She made a mess of the things at home, and she was given a good scolding by her parents. Peter finally came to school. But he seemed a little lethargic and sleepy. Kerrigan and Jane both knew what he was doing that night and kept silent. Kerrigan sat with Jane at lunchtime. Peter triumphantly came over with the newspaper. Guys, big news, Spider-Man has arrested 20 more criminals. He can't beat Kerrigan now, and he doesn't dare to stab Kerrigan. But now that I am a superhero, I definitely want to show off. Jane looked at the arrogant Peter and was furious. What's there to be proud of? What are you going to do? Kerrigan asked with interest. Queen, you should be aware of this. Jane smiled evilly. Chapter 7. Late at night. New York Times Square finally fell silent. In the underground parking lot of a building on the east side of Times Square, a commercial vehicle stopped. Several big men in suits jumped out of the business car in a hurry. After checking around to confirm that no one was there, they moved a box out of the business car. They walked to the elevator and lifted the flap to reveal another set of buttons. After pressing the -30 button, several big men walked into the elevator with their boxes. After everyone left, a few small bugs loomed out next to the elevator in the parking lot, and soon disappeared. In the hotel, Kerrigan raised his eyebrows lazily. Did they finally show up? Fortunately, I arranged mimic bugs in the elevators of each building in advance. Since the Umbrella New Vietnam base is under Times Square, they must have a dedicated channel for transportation. Elevator is definitely the best choice. Now, we know their entrance and exit, but how do we let the bugs in? Kerrigan connected to the Zerg psychic network. Insect Queen, is there a way for us to make the mimic bugs mimic humans? Queen, the size of the mimic bugs is too small to do this at the moment, and our resources are not enough to produce infected people. Is that so? I understand. I will deal with the resource issue as soon as possible. The Skull Island side also has to look for suitable resources on the seabed. The ocean is a big treasure house. As you command, Queen. After giving the order, Kerrigan raised the corners of her mouth slightly. Soon, they will be loyal to the swarm. One punch knocked the gangster in front of him to the ground, and the gun in his hand was also knocked to the ground. Spider-Man put his hands on his hips, stepped on the pistol, and said with some pride, "Hey, man, your fire stick is useless." "Shit, Spider-Man, what are you crazy about? We are Kingpin's men. If you dare to hand us over to the police, you will definitely get nothing good." Even after being knocked to the ground, the gangster was still shouting, "Kingpin, I'm going to catch him one day." Spider-Man scratched his head. In fact, he had no idea who Kingpin was. Suddenly, the gangster put his hand to his waist and took out a pistol. Spider-Man didn't expect that this man was carrying two guns. At this critical moment, a spider web struck from a distance and stuck the gangster directly to the wall, unable to move. Spider-Man turned around suddenly and was surprised to find a woman with a good figure wearing tight clothes and her face covered with a cloth standing on the roof of the building looking at him. "Don't be careless at any time." The woman spoke, her voice smiling and smiling, as if she was making fun of Spider-Man. Spider-Man was stunned. Then, he saw the woman wave her hand, and a spider web sprayed to the top of the building, and then disappeared after a few jumps. Spider-Man didn't know what to say. He hurriedly sprayed out cobwebs, trying to catch up with the woman. But in New York, which is so big, it's not that easy to find someone. Peter found a rooftop and lifted his mask. "Why is there someone who uses the same power as me? And a woman?" He was so distraught now that he had no idea what was happening. On the other side, Jane quietly slipped back into the skylight of her house. Jane got into bed, clenching her little fists excitedly. "I did it! I did it!" This is Jane's first time to go out to do justice, and this is also the task Kerrigan gave her. The female Spider-Man is more famous than the Spider-Man. Although she was dissatisfied with Peter's current attitude, Jane still took action to save Peter when she saw him in danger. The next day, Jane came to Kerrigan excitedly with the newspaper. "Sister Sarah, look! The photo in the newspaper is extremely clear. It shows a good-looking masked woman holding a spider web as she walks between high-rise buildings. It looks like she was taking a selfie." Kerrigan raised an eyebrow. "Who took this photo? It's a good shot." Jane's mouth felt a little unnatural. "Well, it must have been taken by a reporter, he is very handsome." Kerrigan showed a slight smile. "It's very good, but the costume is not very good looking. It looks too much like Spider-Man. You need to have your own characteristics." Jane nodded, thinking about designing her own battlesuit. Not long after, Peter came too. He became a little depressed. Seeing the extremely excited Jane, Peter muttered, "Isn't she just a female Spider-Man? How can she be better than a Spider-Man?" When Jane heard this, she immediately put her hands on her hips and said loudly, "The female Spider-Man is definitely better than the Spider-Man. With her here, the security of New York will definitely be greatly improved." Peter also got angry. "Nonsense! As a Spider-Man, Peter has a sense of arrogance. He is an Asgardian in the dark. How could Jane be so demeaning?" As soon as he rolled up his sleeves, he wanted to take action. But seeing Kerrigan on the side, he silently pulled back his sleeves. Seeing Peter flinch, Jane curled her lips disdainfully. Originally, she planned to show off her skills and shock Peter. Kerrigan on the side was sitting firmly on the Diao Yute, watching the show with peace of mind. I wonder what the scene will be like when Peter finds out that the female Spider-Man is Jane. Definitely, quite exciting. Time passed like water. Kerrigan watched the newspaper reports every day. The female Spider-Man and the Spider-Man started a hunting competition to fight against night crimes in New York City. Every day, the number of prisoners they captured reached a new high. This really troubles the new Vietnam Police Department, and the cells can hardly be filled. But at the same time, everyone was puzzled by the listless appearance of Jane and Peter during the day. The two could only explain it under the guise of a research project. At the same time, Peter is no longer interested in venting his anger on Kerrigan. The target of his anger now becomes the female Spider-Man. Kerrigan had a headache. The energy problem is becoming more and more serious, and she needs to find new energy sources to resolve the crisis. Just after class, she saw the boys gathering together to look at their mobile phones. What big thing happened again? Jiang came over. Sister Sarah, big news. Tony Stark, chairman of Stark Group, was attacked by violent terrorists in the east and is now missing. Kerrigan took out her phone and checked the news. She murmured in a low voice, Iron Man's genes seem, nothing special, but this guy is good at developing energy, maybe. Kerrigan quickly made up her mind and ordered the king bugs that immediately floated near East Central to prepare to go out and rescue Tony Stark. A few days ago, after establishing the New York Zerg base, Kerrigan transmitted some electronic data back to Skull Island and ordered all the king bugs on Skull Island to complete their concealment and float around the world through air currents. This world is so exciting that Kerrigan needs many pairs of eyes to monitor it, and the Overlord worm is her eyes. The Skull Island base disguises the king insects into huge amounts of weather balloons, carrying some combat troops to fly around the world, and one king insect has almost arrived near Dongzhong. After receiving the order, the king insect floated leisurely over the desert and then landed. Then, countless Zerg jumped out from the king worm and burrowed into the sand. Kerrigan, who was far away in the beautiful country, smiled, I hope that guy won't be scared by the Zerg, they are very cute. Chapter 8. You, make sure he doesn't die. The man whose face was covered with a turban dropped a bruised man in front of Dr. Ethan like he was dragging a dead dog, and spoke in blunt English. Dr. Ethan picked up the man at a loss and said, I am a physicist, not a doctor, and there are no conditions for treatment here. I don't care, if he dies, you die. After leaving these words, the masked man turned around and left. Damn it! Dr. Ethan sighed helplessly and began to try to treat the man in front of him. He wiped the blood from the man's face and was slightly stunned. Jesus, Tony Stark! When Tony woke up, he felt like there was something on his chest. He raised his head and saw a tall man shaving leisurely. You're awake? The man said without looking back. Who are you? Tony asked reluctantly. My name is Ethan. I am a PhD in physics. As you can see, I was also kidnapped by those guys. Dr. Ethan turned around and smiled. Tony lowered his head and found a round device on his chest, with a battery-like thing connected to the other end of the device. There's nothing you can do, there are too many shrapnels on your body. Dr. Ethan said as he handed Tony a glass bottle with several pieces of shrapnel inside. There are still a lot of shrapnel left in your body that cannot be removed. I can only put an electromagnet on your chest and use the car battery to activate the electromagnet to absorb the shrapnel, otherwise they will soon flow to you along your blood. Heart, you will really be dead at that time. Ethan smiled broadly. At this moment, the door of the cave where the two of them were was kicked open, and a group of men walked in with weapons raised. The two immediately held their heads in their hands, signaling that they were harmless. A bearded man walked towards Tony with a smile. Mr. Stark, I'm sorry to invite you in such a special way. He handed them a piece of paper. Our purpose is clear. As long as you can build huge amounts of missiles with the power you demonstrated before, we will ensure your safety. Ethan carefully took the paper, and when Tony took a look, he realized that it was a new missile just developed by his weapons research department. The two looked at each other in silence. Then, the bearded man forced the two of them out again. This is our camp, it's very spectacular. The bearded man pointed at the violent terrorists coming and going, holding various weapons. And Tony noticed that the weapons and equipment around these people were all products of his own company. Tony's heart was extremely cold. After returning to the cave, Tony was heartbroken. He did not intend to help this group of violent terrorists, but was prepared to die. Ethan on the side saw Tony's gloomy expression and came to squat next to him. Listen Tony, you can't give up. Now that it's happened, let's give it a try. Tony took a deep breath. You're right, you can't give up. He stood up and shouted, get the equipment and materials, otherwise I can't build the missile. Queen, the insect swarm has found traces of the human and can rescue him at any time. Overlord reported to Kerrigan the progress of the Zerg rescue operation. What is that guy doing now? That human is working with another human, immersed in studying some kind of device. Kerrigan heard the words and thought for a moment, let's not rush to the rescue now. It is far better to provide icing on the cake than to provide help when it is time for him to wait until his steel armor is built before carrying out the rescue. As you command, Queen. After disconnecting the Zerg spiritual network, Kerrigan looked at various information again. She needed to plan carefully how to maximize the benefits of the Zerg in the plot of Iron Man's birth. At the same time, she must also consider and prepare for contact with SHIELD. In the cave, Tony and Ethan were chatting and busy with what they were doing. Ethan, what do you know about these guys? Tony asked while taking apart the missile in front of him. They are from an organization called the Freedom Fighters, and you know what they do. By the way, they are loyal buyers of your company. Ethan took a small bottle and found Tony holding a small piece of iron with tweezers. It's okay, this is what I need most now. Tony nodded with satisfaction. Ethan, help me dismantle all the weapons here. I need a lot of palladium. Ethan was stunned, but still followed Tony's instructions. In the cave on the other side, Big Beard and others were monitoring Tony's work through surveillance. However, for semi-illiterates like them, they couldn't understand what Tony and the two were doing. At this time, the soil around him trembled slightly. Everyone didn't care. In Dongzhong, this situation is normal. Perfect, so perfect. Ethan looked at the small arc reactor in Tony's hand. You are really a super genius, Tony. Tony nodded with a smile, then definitely, come on, look at this. Tony installed the reactor on his chest, replaced the electromagnet, and took out another roll of paper. Ethan stretched out his head to look, and was shocked to find something like a steel armor drawn on the paper. That's my ultimate plan. Tony narrowed his eyes. How about giving them a little surprise? Tony's work is going very well. He has spent almost 3 days in this cave. Big Beard and the others never discovered that what Tony and the others built was not a missile at all. However, when they took the missile blueprint and looked over it for a long time, they finally found something was wrong. Stop it! Everyone rushed into Tony and Ethan's cave. What on earth are you doing? A bald man walked out of the crowd and stared coldly at Tony, the leader of the Freedom Fighters. Seeing that the situation was not good, Ethan insisted that what the two made was a missile. Snort! The bald man pulled Ethan over, pressed him next to the stove, and picked up a piece of charcoal. Tell me the truth, or you'll eat it. Looking at the charcoal fire getting closer and closer in front of him, Ethan was sweating profusely. No, he is my assistant. If you hurt him, I will be completely unable to continue building missiles. Tony shouted quickly. Hearing this, the bald man thought for a moment. Okay, I'll give you one more day. If I don't see the missile tomorrow, both of you will die. Putting down his harsh words, the bald man turned around and left. After everyone left, Ethan and Tony looked at each other with lingering fears and immediately started the building work. In the cave, the clanging sound of knocking echoed constantly. Finally, the sound stopped. The two took out another blueprint and began to plan their escape route. Chapter 9. In the early morning, Tony and the two began to assemble the armor. The bald man concentrated in front of the monitor, staring at the movements of the two people. When he found Tony standing there while Ethan started to install certain parts on Tony, he looked stunned. Something's wrong, let's go check it out. The bald man ordered in a low voice. The two boys carried guns and headed to Tony's cave. As soon as I touched the door, I heard a beeping sound from door to door. Then, there was a loud noise with incomparable heat waves and flames, and the two of them were blown away, and they were dead before their eyes. Damn it! The bald man was furious and immediately led people to rush towards Tony's cave. On the other side, Ethan was working nervously in front of the computer. Okay, it only takes a few minutes and the armor will be activated. Ethan raised his head, sweating profusely, and smiled at Tony. Ethan, hide quickly, I will take you out later. Tony shouted eagerly. Ethan glanced at the program being started, gritted his teeth, and picked up the weapon from the two people who were killed. Live well, Tony. Damn it, Ethan, don't go, you still have a family. Tony shouted. But I saw Ethan turn around and smile. Actually, my family has died in the war a long time ago. I am very relaxed now. With that, he rushed out of the cave with his rifle. Ethan, Ethan. Damn it. Tony could only watch as Ethan rushed out. He knew that Ethan was going to sacrifice himself to save him. Ethan, who was holding a rifle, had just run out of the cave when he saw a bunch of guns pointed at him in front of him. Kill him! The bald man ordered fiercely. Everyone was about to shoot when suddenly, there was a loud noise. The soil around everyone exploded. A group of ferocious-looking creatures rushed towards everyone with roars and roars. The fangs and claws tore apart the violent terrorists who could not react in time. Ethan was so frightened that he lay on the ground and did not dare to move. No, what is this? Help! In just an instant, a group of violent terrorists were torn to pieces by these creatures. The bald man just screamed and his head was cut off. Seeing the movement around him stop, Ethan swallowed and slowly raised his head. But he saw a rather large strange creature staring at him. Seeing Ethan raise his head, the strange creature pointed at the tunnel they rushed out of with its forelimbs. Ethan boldly asked, "You mean, let me get in?" He thought he would be torn to pieces by these things, but it seemed that these things were intelligent. The strange creature nodded. Ethan cautiously got into the tunnel and looked back at the strange creatures. Seeing Ethan get into the tunnel, the strange creatures quickly spread out and began to look for violent terrorists to hunt. God bless! Ethan licked his lips and began to crawl along the tunnel. Sonorous footsteps sounded in the cave. The armor is finally activated. Tony took a deep breath. Ethan, I will definitely avenge you. Suddenly, he heard screams and wailing from the front of the cave. Then, 4 or 5 huge monsters rushed in front of Tony. Tony's eyes widened because he had never seen these creatures before. But looking at the blood on their forelimbs and mouth parts, Tony realized that they were coming with bad intentions. Just as he was about to fire, an inexplicable voice echoed in Tony's mind. Don't attack, we are here to save you. Tony was stunned, looking around to see who was speaking. But he found those strange creatures standing in front of him, seeming to be looking at the armor on him with interest. You are talking to me? Tony asked cautiously. Yes, we are an intelligent race called the Zerg, ordered by Queen Kerrigan to save you, human. The voice continued. Tony felt like his world had been turned upside down. He opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. Excuse me, have you seen my companion? He is a tall, thin human being wearing glasses. Definitely, he has left through the escape channel we prepared. You should follow him quickly. Tony was relieved to hear the news that Ethan was safe. He frowned and said, No, I can't leave yet, I want to kill these guys. It's up to you, but now we have basically killed all the guys with weapons in this camp. The Zerg raised its forelimbs and said, The passage is at the door of your cave. Let's go first. After that, several Zerg walked away. Tony could only watch the Zergs go away in a daze. He lifted his feet and walked out of the cave. He looked at the passage next to the cave and then looked at the terrorist camp. At the moment, the camp was littered with corpses and killed violent terrorists. Tony sighed, placed explosives in the weapons depot in the camp, and then got into the Zerg cave. The Zerg thoughtfully expanded the passage for Tony before leaving so that his armor could pass through. Climbing out of the passage, he saw Ethan sitting on the ground, a group of Zerg people lying quietly on the ground, and beside them, there was a huge amount of monster. The diameter of this monster is about 20 meters. The most surprising thing is that this monster is actually floating in the air. As the chairman of Stark Industries, Tony is well informed, but when he saw this behemoth, he also lost the ability to speak. When Ethan saw Tony coming up, he excitedly rushed forward to hug him. That's great, Tony, you're out too. Tony forced a smile and asked hesitantly, Is this one? Oh, this, they are called king insects by the Zerg. They are the Queen's messengers and also the means of transportation for the Zerg. Ethan smiled and pointed at the king insect. How did it, float? Tony stared at the king insect, puzzled. Although it has no wings, it can float in the air. I don't understand this either, and they don't seem willing to say more. Ethan sighed and turned to look at the Zerg clan. Excuse me, why did you rescue us? The inexplicable voice echoed in their minds. Tony Stark, the Queen is very interested in you. You will know it later. Now, go home. After that, a group of Zerg jumped on the King Bug and got in. Then, the King Bug's shell began to change rapidly, disguised as a weather balloon that Tony and others were familiar with, and flew into the sky, gradually moving away. Tony and Ethan's eyes widened as they watched the king insect go away. I really can't believe that there is such a weird race on Earth. Tony took off his iron armor and crawled out panting. No one would have thought that maybe this is the real world. Ethan frowned. At this time, there was a roar in the sky. When the two looked up, they found several helicopters heading in their direction. Tony saw the flag on the helicopter at a glance. These guys are so slow to come. He and Ethan looked at each other and waved vigorously towards the helicopter. Chapter 10. New Vietnam. Kerrigan received the report from the king insect and nodded with satisfaction. Next, it was time to reach out to Tony. However, if Tony's first-generation armor was not lost in the East, will it lead to the subsequent plot? Kerrigan frowned slightly and suddenly smiled. It doesn't matter what the plot is, as long as the Zerg can get the maximum benefit. Exhausted physically and mentally, Tony finally returned to his mansion. He took Ethan over, but Dong Zhong was still not safe. This encounter gave Tony an idea. What? You're going to shut down Stark Industries' weapons research department and turn to energy development? Ethan's face was full of disbelief when he heard Tony's thoughts. Tony, do you know the consequences of doing this? Although I support your idea, if you do this, you will definitely be expelled from the board of directors of Stark Industries. But Tony nodded heavily. I know, but I think I have to do this. Seeing that Tony had made up his mind, Ethan said, okay, I support you. Big news, the chairman of Stark Industries actually announced the closure of the weapons development department. The boys were discussing among themselves. Jane was a little dissatisfied because of this news. The news that she arrested 20 criminals last night didn't even make the headlines. Kerrigan smiled slightly and began. Just after the press conference, Obi, Tony's father's good friend, Tony's right-hand man, and second only to Tony in the Stark industry, found Tony. Tony, you must be confused. Without the weapons development department, our group will definitely suffer heavy losses. Tony took a deep breath and led Obi to the large nuclear reactor of Stark Industries. I want to do something about the reactor. Obi smiled disdainfully. This crap is just a gimmick, there's no profit to be made at all. Tony thought for a moment and unbuttoned his clothes. The small reactor on his chest made Obi stunned. Light flickered in Obi's eyes, and then Obi quickly covered Tony's clothes. Okay, I get it. He gave in and agreed to let Tony try. Back home, Tony saw Ethan busy. His assistant Xiao Jiao was smiling and saying something to him. Potts, help me get the new reactor. Tony waved, and Pepper hurriedly apologized to Ethan before walking over with the newly developed reactor. The new reactor is better than the old one, both in terms of energy and durability. This is what Tony and Ethan worked on non-stop as soon as they came back. What to do with the old one? Pepper asked. Throw it away. Tony said without looking back. He didn't care about this now, he wanted to come up with something new on his armor. Although the military was very interested in Tony's armor, because Colonel Rhodes helped to put in good words, they still did not embarrass Tony and allowed Tony to take his first-generation armor home. By the way, today there was someone from the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency who said he was very interested in what you experienced in Dongzhong. Little Pepper suddenly remembered something. What a bullshit name, it's smelly and long. Tony curled his lips disdainfully. Don't worry about them, they are probably the ones who are also interested in my armor. He and Ethan looked at each other. Neither of them leaked anything about the Zerg. It's very simple. The Zerg said that their queen will find Tony. If the news about the Zerg is revealed and the Zerg is displeased, then the two of them will have a lot of fun. Moreover, Tony knew nothing about how many groups there were and whether there were other species. Being cautious and keeping your mouth shut is the smartest choice. East Central. The camp of the freedom fighters was in shambles. Several jeeps drove up in a hurry, and a group of people jumped out. They didn't even look at the messy bombed camp, but went straight to the cave where Tony and Ethan were imprisoned. These people search very minutely, even using a sieve to sift through dust. Finally, they found several torn pieces of paper from the legs of a workbench. Looking at the patterns drawn on the paper, several people nodded, quickly ran out of the cave, got in the car and drove away. Obi frowned as he looked at the information sent by his subordinates from Dongzhong. It seems that the little kid escaped with this thing. As expected of a Stark family cub. Obi slammed the table and called his secretary. Go, summon the engineers and scientists immediately, I have something I need them to do, late at night. Obi drove to Tony's house, said hello to Tony, and smiled friendly at Ethan and Pepper. As soon as he sat down on the sofa, Obi said with a sad face, Tony, I'm sorry, the board of directors has still removed you. Obi expected Tony to be shocked, but he was disappointed. Tony ate his favorite pizza with a nonchalant expression, it doesn't matter, I will get my seat back. Obi shook his head, Tony, since you want to transform into energy development, you need to come up with something to convince the board of directors. He pointed to the small reactor on Tony's chest, and the purpose was self-evident. No, I will never hand over the reactor. Tony wiped his mouth, those guys don't know what sustainable development is. The two broke up unhappy. Seeing Obi walk out of the room angrily, Tony saw Ethan and Pepper looking at him worriedly. Don't worry, we'll make it. The 3414th flight test has begun. Tony, please tell me immediately if there is any abnormality. On the radio, Ethan's voice was slightly tired. These days, he and Tony have been working on armor modifications and tests non-stop. Not only were many problems discovered, but also considerable improvements were made. The current armor is much more powerful than the previous pile of scrap metal. It not only incorporates various weapon systems, but also can fly smoothly. Tony gave his armor the code name Mark, and named his previous steel armor Mark Type 1, and now wears Mark Type 2. The engine under his feet spurted out flames, and Tony flew straight through the roof. He roared excitedly and connected to his smart butler. Hey, Jarvis. Sir, I'm glad to serve you. Your current speed has exceeded Mach 1. It is recommended to slow down and drive slowly. Haha, we are in the sky now, there is no need to slow down. Tony smiled and sent another message to Ethan at home, Ethan, the flight was successful, I want to fly for a while now. Okay, but remember to save enough energy to fly home. Also, don't fly too high. The material of the armor is easy to freeze at high altitudes. We still need more suitable materials. Ethan, who was sitting on the chair, took a gentle sip of coffee and said with a smile. Know it. Tony closed the communication and flew higher and higher with laughter. Chapter 11. Everything went smoothly with the development of the warframe. There were no accidents except that Tony accidentally smashed the luxury sports car to pieces when he came home from his first flight. Time flies so fast, it's been nearly half a month since Tony and I escaped from danger. That day, Tony just came home and found the gift that Pepper had left for him. It was a small arc reactor, the one Tony had assembled in the first place. The reactor is nicely framed in a crystal box, and Stark's warm heart is engraved around the reactor. Tony chuckled and put the crystal box aside. Ethan on the side smiled and said, such a good woman, why don't you propose to her? Well, I don't really want to start a family. I don't think I'm ready yet. Tony raised his head and said calmly. Okay, let's not mention this. I think we can use satellite-specific gold titanium alloy materials. This way the armor will not be afraid of low temperatures at high altitudes, and it can also strengthen the hardness of the fuselage. This must be very good. Tony clicked on the system at hand and said. A good idea, but the cost of this armor is quite high. The Mark III armor is also good, but you should choose a suitable painting. Oh? Any good ideas? Tony laughed. Red is the main color. I think you like red. As soon as Ethan finished speaking, J.A.R.V.I.S.'s voice sounded again, it is recommended to add gold for blending. Wow, J.A.R.V.I.S., your aesthetic is very good, gold and red, perfect. Ethan smacked his lips, by the way, Pepper told me yesterday that the Freedom Fighters organization is still buying weapons from Stark Industries, and she doesn't know who signed it. Tony was stunned for a moment, then became furious. Someone is doing something behind your back. He smiled coldly, I know, I'm going to kill them all right now. Wait, what are you in a hurry for? Ethan stopped him. It's useless for you to find the remnants of those freedom fighters now. What you have to do now is to find out who is behind this. Tony frowned and said, you are right, the source is the most important, but I have been removed from the board of directors and there is no way to investigate within the group. Let Miss Potts go, I think she can do it. Ethan smiled. Tony nodded and dialed the phone. Pepper came out of Obi's office in fear. She clutched the USB flash drive, her palms all sweaty. Just in time, she met someone head-on. Miss Potts, you look panicked. What's the matter? Phil Coulson asked with a smile. Cover me. Little Pepper glanced back and walked away in a hurry. Phil Coulson quickly covered Pepper as he walked out of the Stark building. Obi, who had discovered that the information had been copied, walked out of the office angrily, but could only watch the two people go away. Damn it! We have to take action in advance. He immediately rushed downstairs and drove out of the building. Obi came all the way to Tony's house. At the moment, Tony was the only one in Tony's house, and Ethan went out. Tony was a little surprised by Obi's visit, but considering that he was a good friend of his father, Tony didn't become suspicious. The two were laughing and talking, and Obi suddenly stood up and walked behind Tony. A burst of electric current hit Tony instantly, causing his whole body to twitch. You! Tony was shocked, but lost control of his body. Obi put away the small suppressor proudly. Boy, you are too careless. After confirming that Tony couldn't move, Obi directly removed the reactor from his chest. How beautiful, it is a perfect combination of art and technology. This treasure is like a pearl covered in dust in your hands. After that, he walked away. After losing the reactor, Tony looked ashen. Can not give up. Tony thought about what Ethan said before. Gritting his teeth, he crawled to the studio and ordered J.A.R.V.I.S to hand him the old reactor. After the installation was completed, Tony finally breathed a sigh of relief. He angrily put on his battle suit and flew towards Stark Industrial Building. At the moment it was almost evening. Pepper hurried to the Stark building with Phil Coulson and others. On the other side, Obi looked at the huge armor in front of him and smiled happily. The sound of hurried footsteps in the building alerted Obi. He snorted coldly and immediately put on his armor. People inside, listen, put your hands up and surrender, or we'll shoot. Phil Coulson and his colleagues shouted. Boom! There was a roar, and a huge armor, more than 3 meters high, rushed out of the laboratory. Everyone was shocked, and before they had time to react, several agents were instantly knocked out by the armor. Bang bang! The agents fired continuously, the bullets rattling on the armor, but they were unable to do anything to the armor. Soon, all the agents were knocked to the ground, and Little Pepper was forced into the corner by the armor. Obi raised his right arm and pointed the minigun at Pepper. Just as he was about to kill Pepper, a whistling sound came from the distance, a red light flashed, and there was a loud bang, and he was knocked out. It's Tony's Mark III armor. The two armors immediately struggled with each other. Obi's armor is huge, and Tony is no match. Tony thought for a moment and flew directly outside the building. Obi chased after him directly. Since Tony was currently using a first-generation reactor, its power was completely inferior to that of the second-generation reactor, and he soon fell into a disadvantage. He was so anxious that he rushed high into the sky. Unexpectedly, Obi's huge armor could fly, and with thick smoke, it flew directly towards Tony who was flying into the sky. Boy, you can't run away. Obi said with a cruel smile. I wonder how you solve the problem of losing temperature at high altitudes. Tony suddenly laughed. Obi was stunned for a moment, and then found that all the systems in his armor had lost their function due to the low temperature. Losing power, Obi's armor plummeted toward the ground like an iron bead. Tony looked at the huge fallen armor, turned around and flew back to the ground, breathing a sigh of relief. He took off his right-hand armor glove. The battle just now was too fierce and the glove was burned from too much use. Tony took off his mask and was about to ask Pepper if he was injured when there was a loud noise from behind. It's Obi. Tony turned around and prepared to fire the cannon in his palm, but suddenly realized that his gloves had just been thrown away. Shit! He was stunned for a moment, and then was knocked out with an iron fist from Obi. Potts, turn on all the circuit switches of the reactor. Tony shouted. Little Pepper, who didn't understand why, was stunned for a moment, but quickly followed the instructions. Boom! Another iron fist hit, and Tony's mask was also blown away, and his whole body was sent flying to the glass window above the reactor. Obi pulled out his weapon and shattered the glass at his feet. Tony's old reactor power was no longer enough to start the foot engine, so he could only grab the railing of the glass window in a hurry. I should have killed you, little boy. Obi sneered, opened his mask, and aimed his right cannon at Tony. Boom. Wrong shot. The weapon aiming system of Obi's armor had just been damaged. But he didn't care and was ready to continue firing at Tony. At the critical moment, little Pepper in the main control room gave a heavy slap and was about to press the main switch of the large reactor. Just press the switch and the reactor will overload and explode. At this moment, a hand stopped Pepper's hand. It was a very beautiful hand, and Pepper promised that she had never seen such perfect hands. An elegant female voice sounded. This good thing cannot be ruined like this. Chapter 12. Little Pepper was stunned, and turned around to find that at some point, a woman with an extremely outstanding appearance was standing next to her. The woman is very pretty, probably in her early 20s. Wearing a white chiffon pleated skirt, the irregular skirt hangs elegantly near the knees. On her slender feet, she wears a pair of 7 cm stroppy open-toe high-heeled sandals. The 2 red straps on the sandals are intertwined with each other in a cross pattern. The knot is tied to the calf, all the way to the knee, which makes the slender feet more sexy and charming. Her long burgundy curly hair was neatly combed back and tied into a delicate bun on the back of her head. It was firmly fixed with a crystal butterfly hairpin, revealing her smooth jade-like forehead and her face with elegant makeup. With light makeup, the whole person looks mature, sexy and attractive. Who are you? Don't stop me. Tony is going to die. Pepper is not in the mood to care who this woman is. Tony is in danger. But he saw the corners of the woman's mouth raised slightly. Don't worry, he won't die. Pepper raised her head, only to find that Obi was surrounded by a group of weird creatures. A strange creature lay in front of Obi's armor, looking at the bald head with interest. Obi was sweating profusely because the mouth parts of this strange creature were almost reaching his forehead. Tony got up and looked at these strange creatures. But a voice came from below, bring them down, I don't like anyone who dares to stand on top of me. 2 multi-ton armors were easily lifted off the roof by those weird creatures. Kerrigan stepped on Obi's armor and opened the reactor shell on his chest. Not bad, very good. Who are you? Tony, supported by Pepper, looked at Kerrigan in shock. Kerrigan smiled, and the insects around her stood around her like stars holding the moon. What do you think? I think I know. Tony swallowed and lowered his head. Nice to meet you, Your Majesty the Queen of the Zerg. Very good, let's talk in detail later. How do you want to deal with this guy? Kerrigan glanced at Abideo, who was grabbed out of the armor by the Zerg and pinned to the ground. Tony gritted his teeth. Kerrigan's meaning was simple, kill or stay. Tony, help me, I'm your uncle, I'm your father's good friend. Obi yelled at Tony. Your Majesty, everything depends on your wishes. Tony composed himself. Originally, he planned to ask Kerrigan to let Obi go, but Obi dared to mention friendship, so he couldn't keep him. If Obito kidnapped him and planned to kill him, and let him go, then Tony was really an idiot. Kill him, I don't like people who betray the Lord. Kerrigan said coldly. Before Obi had time to react, a sharp thorn pierced his throat and he fell softly. Pepper was startled, covered her mouth and shivered. Kerrigan snapped her fingers, and a group of Zerg slowly crawled into the ground and disappeared. This is not the place to talk. Can I be a guest at your home? It's an honor. Your Majesty. Tony quickly replied in a low voice. Pepper laughed along and carefully served Kerrigan tea. Ethan sat upright on the sofa, not daring to slack off. Tony sat across from Kerrigan, as helpless as a student being asked a question by the teacher. Thanks. Kerrigan took the hot tea and took a sip. I'm not looking for you for anything else. My tribe needs new energy. I think, you are a good partner. This, I'm afraid I can't be of much help. Tony answered carefully. Kerrigan chuckled and said, Tony Stark, you have to believe in the vision of a king. She stood up and said, our cooperation will be based on mutual win-win and mutual trust between both parties. In addition, the Zerg will not interfere with the normal life of human society. You can rest assured about this. Then, what can the Zerg provide us? Ethan asked hesitantly. Power. Kerrigan showed a smile. Tony, if you put on the armor, you are indeed very powerful, but if you take off the armor, you are just an ordinary human being. The Zerg can teach you a special power. With this power, you can achieve longevity and strength. She waved her hand, and the teacup on the table flew directly to her hand without spilling a drop of tea. The three of them were shocked. What kind of power is this? Then, will there be any sequelae or something? Pepper also asked. Don't worry, the Zerg are experts in biology. This kind of power will not harm humans. Well, maybe it will. You will become very energetic. Kerrigan chuckled and said, for women, it will also enhance your charm and maintain your figure and appearance. Isn't it exciting? Tony licked his lips. Your Majesty the Queen, I am very grateful for your help in saving my life and Ethan's, but when it comes to cooperating with other races, I understand, you still feel unsafe. Kerrigan didn't care about Tony's attitude. It should be said that you still don't know much about this world. When you know more about it, you will know how precious this opportunity is. She walked towards the door. The cooperation agreement is valid for a long time. When you think about it clearly, just call that number. After that, Kerrigan walked out of Tony's house. Seeing Kerrigan walking away, the three of them fell down on the sofa as if they had escaped death. I still can't believe that there are other intelligent races in the world whose leaders look just like humans. Little Pepper lay on the sofa and said slowly. Based on the majesty displayed by His Majesty, I have no doubt about his status as a king. Ethan frowned. Yeah, I don't know what she meant by knowing more about the world just now. Tony sighed. Look. Pepper suddenly pointed at the table and said. Tony and Ethan looked over and were surprised to find a series of numbers engraved with water appearing on the table. The two swallowed, and Ethan quickly wrote down the number, and then tried to erase the number. With just a light wipe, the number disappeared without leaving any trace. Being able to carve numbers silently with water without damaging the tabletop at all. The control of this kind of power is so terrifying. Tony's teeth trembled slightly. Then, his phone rang. It's his good friend, Colonel Rhodes. Mr. Stark, as long as you read this manuscript, no problems will involve you. Phil Coulson smiled and handed Tony a note. Thank you, Agent Phil Coulson. Pepper thanked her profusely, while Tony looked at the manuscript without saying a word. Nothing, this is what we should do. By the way, our department has changed its name. It will be called S.H.I.E.L.D. from now on. Phil Coulson smiled and said goodbye. After Phil Coulson left, Pepper patted Tony, making Tony wake up from his deep thoughts and quickly walked into the press conference. The press conference has begun. Tony had just said a few words when reporter Christine, who had a one-night stand with him before, interrupted his speech and asked him who the mecha warrior was that fell from the sky. Tony stammered about how he wasn't a hero. Colonel Rhodes, who was beside him, saw that the situation was not good and immediately whispered to him to read from the manuscript. Tony picked up the manuscript again. He was silent for a moment, then slowly said, I am Iron Man boom. The whole place was excited. As soon as Tony returned home from the press conference, he found a person sitting on the sofa, and Ethan was chatting with him. Seeing Tony coming back, the man stopped talking and looked at Tony with a smile. This is a black man. He seems to be blind in his left eye, so he is covered with an eye patch and looks gangster. Introducing myself, my name is Nick Fury, director of SHIELD. Tony was stunned. Why did the S.H.I.E.L.D. director come to his house? But Nick Fury turned to look at the sea view outside the window, and then slowly turned his head. Tony Stark, you are not the only superhero in the world. Now, you have become a part of this great world, you just don't know it yet. Chapter 13. After Fury left, Tony and Ethan sat on the sofa, unable to calm down for a long time. Ethan, do you think what the bald man said is true? After a long time, Tony spoke. It can't be true. As the director of SHIELD, he has no need to deceive us. Ethan sighed. What do you think, Tony? I was wondering whether I should cooperate with that majesty. Tony frowned. Since the world is so dangerous, I think we need a stronger force, whether to protect ourselves or face the future. Yes, His Majesty is right about one thing. You have great power when you put on the armor, but if you take off the armor, your personal life safety will be very problematic. Ethan nodded. However, we also need to find out the details of His Majesty. After all, no one knows the size and strength of the so-called Zerg, and Nico Fury seems to be unaware of the existence of the Zerg. I just asked. He was obviously stunned when asked whether there were other intelligent races on the Earth. I understand, and I will investigate. Tony looked serious. Anyway, I am Iron Man now. I can't rashly cooperate with other races without knowing the truth. By the way, when I was rescued by the Zerg before, I quietly ordered J.A.R.V.I.S to record the Zerg's information. Let's take a look at some physical data. With that said, he invited Ethan to read the information together. Ethan raised his eyebrows. What are you? Tony smiled and said, be prepared. Tony is an absolute genius, both in technology development and problem solving. In his mind, the Zerg may be a potential ally, but as a human, he must also think of corresponding countermeasures. If one day the Zerg extends its claws to humans, Tony doesn't know how long humans can resist. A deserted freedom fighter camp welcomed another group of guests. But unlike those guys before, they were more interested in the corpses of terrorists on the ground that were almost buried by the sand. They spent a long time gathering all the mangled corpses. Several men in suits and glasses began to examine each body, and soon one of the men stood up and came to the man standing next to the jeep. Head, although these corpses are badly damaged due to various reasons, some traces of cobweb horses can still be found. The man pushed up his glasses. The cause of death of these people was that they were instantly hit by some kind of attack on their vital parts, and judging from the wounds and bone marks, they were not killed by bullets, but more like some kind of, sharp blade? However, some corpses are too severely decomposed and require further dissection. Blade. The man called the head was stunned, in a camp of violent terrorists who are armed to the teeth, using cold weapons to attack. One blow is fatal, and the time difference between each corpse's death is not big. I'm afraid it was not done by one person, but by a group of people. It's impossible. Even if a group of people attacked, it's impossible for this group of violent terrorists to have no ability to resist at all. Moreover, there were nearly 100 people, and they were all killed within a few minutes. Could it be the guy from that archipelago country who did it? Impossible. The man shook his head. The area where this camp is located is often windy and sandy. Even if some kind of regional control gas is released, it will be blown away quickly. The people of the islands cannot do this, and they have not done this at all. The reason is that although they collect money to do things, they never dare to reach out to Dongzhong. The man sighed, take the body back first. We still need further anatomy and analysis. Yes. Everyone nodded, stuffed the bodies into body bags, jumped into the car, and left quickly. Less than 2 hours after the car left, several helicopters flew in from a distance. Agent Phil Coulson dusted himself off his shoulders and jumped out of the helicopter. He immediately ordered all S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to investigate the entire camp. However, just 3 minutes later, he received bad news. Report, it seems that the bodies in the entire camp have been moved away, and we found nothing. Phil Coulson was stunned for a moment, and immediately reported the situation via satellite phone. After receiving the news, Nico Fury slammed the table. Got beat to the punch again. In recent months, for some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s operations, someone has always arrived at the scene before them. When S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel arrived, Mao was not even left for them. Fury couldn't help but suspect that there was something evil inside SHIELD. But for a while, he couldn't figure out who this ghost was. Okay, come back first. After giving the order for the team to return, Fury sat in a chair and pondered. Dr. Ethan asked me if I know if there are other intelligent races on the Earth and why. He is a physicist, so there is absolutely no need to ask this. Unless, he has seen the existence of a certain intelligent race. Fury narrowed his eyes slightly. Ethan, a Dongzhong native, where can he meet an intelligent race? He stood up and paced around the office. It seems that Tony Stark did not escape using some steel armor in the East, but was rescued by some kind of intelligent race. We need to invite Dr. Ethan to come to S.H.I.E.L.D. for a chat. A group of people quickly jumped out of the car and delivered the body bag to a gate. This door is a bit strange. There is a group of skulls painted on the door, and below the skull is a pattern of 6 weird tentacles. The man called the head stood in front of the electronic lock on the right side of the door and looked at the electronic lock with his pupils. The iris is confirmed. Welcome back to the snake nest, Commander Kend and me. There was a soft sound and the door slowly opened. People filed in carrying body bags. The autopsy staff who had been waiting for a long time immediately analyzed the body. After reading the report in his hand, the white-haired old researcher said hesitantly, Commander, These people did not die from cold weapons, but more like injuries caused by some kind of biological creature. Biology. Yes, no matter how sharp the weapon is, when it cuts into the human body, it will inevitably leave some metal fragments. For example, on this corpse, from the analysis of the traces, it can be seen that he was split in two directly from the hip bone by some kind of attack. However, we did not find any metal residue on his hip bone. You know, the hip bone is one of the hardest bones in the human body and is difficult to handle even with a chainsaw. Can you analyze more information about the attacker? Judging from this alone that it was not caused by a human attack, it is not very rigorous. Look, the wounds on this corpse were cut diagonally from bottom to top. You are also an expert in using cold weapons. If you were asked to attack this person, what posture would you use to cause such damage? Hearing this, Kendan-mi concentrated slightly. It can't be done. It's okay to draw the knife from top to bottom, but it's too laborious to split it into two pieces. It's still diagonal to cut it in half from bottom to top. It's a bit fanciful. So, I personally think that the attacker may not be very tall, only about 1 meter in height. If you look at this body again, he was pierced through the chest by some kind of attack and was fatal with one blow. There are several other bodies with the same 10 of them all pierced the chest cavity very accurately, without changing their position at all, and the few corpses here had even more signs of gnawing, and the attacker's teeth were extremely sharp and broke the bones together, so I judged, this matter was not done by humans. I see. Kendan-mi nodded and said in a deep voice, continue to check and let us know as soon as possible if there are any findings. Chapter 14. Kerrigan returned to New York City High School and continued to be a high school student. The grand curtain is about to unfold, and she is ready to watch the show. In her high-level suite, Jane was reporting her victory results while beating her legs. Queen, I feel that my strength has become stronger recently. Both my movement speed and agility have been greatly improved. Jane raised her head and said suddenly. Oh. Kerrigan, who was thinking about the next strategy, was slightly startled. Give me a drop of your blood. Yes. Jane bit her finger without hesitation and dropped a few drops of blood into the cup on the table. Kerrigan tapped her finger at the blood. Acquire special genes, advanced nuclear radiation spider gene fragments, integration increased to 10.2%. Kerrigan raised her eyebrows. This was really an unexpected surprise. Can the genetic fragments modified by the original Zerg be obtained again to gain integration? She nodded with satisfaction. Yes, the genes I gave you have integrated well in your body, so I have begun to continuously enhance your physical fitness. Jane, you did a good job. After receiving Kerrigan's praise, Jane was all smiles. Queen, what is the reason? Well, I think you have been using ability recently. The more you use it, the ability will definitely start to feed back to you. The corners of Kerrigan's lips raised slightly. I think it won't be long before you can truly surpass Peter. Jane stood up and said, Queen, please rest assured that my subordinates will work harder and will never let the Queen down. Kerrigan chuckled, you don't have to be so restrained. You are not only my subordinate, but also someone I value. I trust you. Hearing this, Jane's eyes fluctuated inexplicably, and she leaned down and leaned next to Kerrigan's legs. Thank you, Queen, it is you who gave me a different life. She slowly leaned on Kerrigan's leg, rubbing it slightly, like a kitten that was attached to its master. Kerrigan gently stroked her hair. What I give you is just a key. How to use this key still requires your own efforts. The atmosphere suddenly became a little charming. Suddenly, as if Jane remembered something, she raised her head and said, Queen, Professor Smith told Peter and I to go to the Umbrella Company to receive the reward tomorrow. Jane was already one of her own, so Kerrigan naturally told her of her decision to take the Umbrella under her wing. These days, in addition to catching criminals at night, Jane also takes time to complete Smith's projects in order to obtain more information about Umbrella. Kerrigan nodded slightly. I understand. Bring the mimics with you, just in case. Do you understand? As you command, Queen. Umbrella New York Times Square base. Several researchers were looking at the reports in front of them with their brows furrowed. A man in military uniform walked into the office, and everyone saluted quickly. Sir Hillis. Well, everyone, sit down. The soldier named Hilary smiled and greeted everyone to sit down, and said, Have you found the spider that escaped? It was discovered. The tracker showed that it last appeared at a technology exhibition, but when our people went to recover it, they only found the body. The genetic body was completely dead. Is that so? Hill's expression became serious, and a trace of indifference flashed in his eyes. He tapped the table slightly and said slowly, "You all know how much effort we put into the experimental subjects. Now that the genes are lost and the higher UPS are blamed, no one can afford it." Hearing this, the researchers sweated slightly on their foreheads. "Don't worry, we have started to develop the genome again." Hillis shook his head. "It's too late, the progress of the project is too delayed, and the superiors are already very dissatisfied." A researcher raised his hand timidly and said, "Sir, there is actually a chance of improvement. We dissected the genome and found that the poison sacs inside it had been exhausted. It must have bitten someone before death, so it was shot to death. If we find the person who was bitten, we might be able to get the genes back." The researcher pushed up his glasses. "According to our investigation, there were not many people near the gene body at that time. I think as long as the investigation department is used, we can quickly find out who may have been bitten by the gene body." Hillis nodded with satisfaction. "This is indeed good news. Okay, I will send out the investigation department to launch an investigation. You should be ready to receive it at any time." After Hillis left, the researchers let out a sigh of relief as if they had passed through the gate of hell. Although Hillis had been smiling just now, everyone knew that this guy was a total cannibal. If nothing else, just look at the fate of the guy who accidentally lost his genome. The security director of the dignified base was directly reduced to a human experimenter, unable to survive or die. "Okay, everyone, go to work quickly. Just leave it to the superiors to find the bitten person. We still have a lot of work on our hands." A researcher clapped his hands and everyone dispersed. Ethan felt a little panicked. The black braised egg opposite him kept staring at him with his one eye, and he was holding an orange cat in his hand. This guy has been in this position for half an hour since he entered the S.H.I.E.L.D. director's office. Finally, when Ethan could no longer hold on any longer, Fury finally spoke. "Dr. Ethan, have you ever seen any other intelligent creatures besides humans?" As soon as these words came out, the sweat on Ethan's forehead instantly broke out. Director Fury, I don't quite understand what you are talking about." Just as he finished stammering, he saw Fury gently put the cat on the table and slowly stood up. Fury walked into Ethan, looked at him coldly and said, "At Tony's house before, you asked me if I knew if there were other intelligent creatures on the earth. Ahem, this is just a curious question. After all, you are the director of SHIELD. You must know a lot of information that we don't know. Just asking." Ethan didn't dare to look into Fury's eyes and avoided his gaze. "Oh, is it so?" Fury cannot be denied. He closed his eyes and slowly opened them again. "Okay, I understand. Thank you for coming, Dr. Ethan. You can go back." As if he was being pardoned, Ethan quickly stood up to thank him, and then hurriedly walked out of the office. After Ethan left, Phil Coulson walked into the office from the side door. "Sir, he's lying." "I know." Fury narrowed his eyes slightly. "Bring in the surveillance cameras near Tony Stark's house. Maybe we can find something interesting." "Okay, I'll do it right away." Phil Coulson nodded and left the office quickly. Fury sighed. The world is getting more and more unstable. He returned to his seat, opened the bottom drawer, glanced at the contents, and then slowly closed it. Not the right time yet. Chapter 15. Logically speaking, no one dares to monitor areas where the top rich live like Tony Stark's residence. After all, Tony is not a fool, and the name of his smart butler J.A.R.V.I.S is also registered with SHIELD. But now that Fury is very interested in the recent happenings at Tony's house, this obstacle is no longer a problem. S.H.I.E.L.D. has actually installed surveillance cameras near Tony's house for a long time. After all, he is the son of one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., so he must keep an eye on him. But in order not to irritate Tony, they didn't watch much. Pause and zoom in. Fury frowned and looked at the monitor. The image was paused, and there were 3 figures inside. It was obvious that the person walking in the front was a woman, but for some reason, no matter how the operator zoomed in on the image, the woman's face was still blurry, while the face of Tony and Pepper who was walking behind her was clear. Visible. "It's strange, why can't you see this woman's face clearly?" the operator muttered, trying to operate. After struggling for a long time, it was still blurry. "I could only tell that the person was a woman, and judging from her figure, she was a beautiful woman. "Sir, is there something wrong with this woman?" Phil Coulson asked. "Well, the cameras we installed near Tony's house are relatively sophisticated. It's impossible to see people's faces clearly. And based on your understanding of Tony Stark, is he a man who likes to walk behind women?" Fury raised an eyebrow. "I'm afraid Mr. Stark is only behind a woman when she's in bed." The operator suddenly smiled evilly. There was a burst of laughter in the monitoring room. Cough. Phil Coulson coughed and everyone quickly shut up. "You're right. With Tony's temperament, no woman would dare to walk in front of him, unless it's someone he can't afford to offend." Fury frowned. "Sir, do you want me to ask Mr. Stark?" Phil Coulson said seriously. "No, I guess he wouldn't tell me if you asked him. Let's investigate quietly first." After Fury finished speaking, he walked out of the monitoring room. He wanted to ask another person. Back in the office, Fury thought for a moment and then dialed a number. In a temple in the Himalayas. Ancient One magician is meditating. The phone in front of her suddenly rang. Don't think that Ancient One is an old stubborn who refuses to change. She still has such convenient things. When I picked up the phone, there was a deep voice on the other end. "Supreme Guardian Magician, I think I need your help." "Oh? Director Nick Fury, didn't we make a contract?" Ancient One said gently. "I know, I want to ask you, have you had any guests recently?" Hearing Fury's question, Ancient One narrowed his eyes slightly. "I understand, what happened?" It's nothing, I just wanted to ask." "That's good. You can rest assured that she is just a guest. I advise you not to provoke her." "Understood." Nico Fury hung up the phone. Ancient One magician's answer just now is very clear, she. Is it really that woman? Fury had a headache. Before S.H.I.E.L.D could figure out what was going on inside, another guest showed up, and this guest seemed to be the leader of a certain intelligent race. He didn't even know what the other's intelligent race was, its size, etc. The most frightening thing is that the woman can block the camera, which shows that she also has some kind of super ability. Fury doesn't think agents like S.H.I.E.L.D can face such unknown enemies. We still need stronger combat power. Nico Fury thought for a moment and called Phil Coulson. "There is a special task, please arrange it." When Nico Fury contacted Ancient One, a group of people were also watching the surveillance. However, what they are looking at is not Tony Stark, but Peter Parker, who is holding the camera. It seems that this kid killed the gene body. It's strange that he didn't die after being bitten by the gene body. The researcher touched his chin curiously. "We have tested many times and found that people who have been injected with gene fragments usually die soon after their whole body breaks apart and their blood dries up. This kid seems to be still in high spirits." Hillis was also a little curious. Look for this kid's information and catch him. Jane and Peter's journey to the umbrella company to receive their award was uneventful. They went to an office, and Animide did not find any valuable clues. This gave Kerrigan a bit of a headache. The opponent's defense was watertight. If he wanted to take advantage of it, he would have to rely on Skull Island to develop a new Zerg race. But expecting a group of insect queens to develop new Zerg races on Skull Island with limited resources is indeed a bit difficult for the insects. Kerrigan couldn't help but miss Abathur, the Zerg engineer in the game. Although Abathur was ugly, he was indeed an indispensable heroic unit for the Zerg. However, Heart of the Swarm did not explain how to obtain hero units, and Kerrigan had no clue yet. "Take it easy for now. I estimate that Tony Stark will contact me soon." Kerrigan sighed slightly and continued to practice psychic abilities. After the integration reaches 10%, the psychic powers she can exert become much more powerful. Although the strength of the psychic powers will increase with the integration, Kerrigan still needs to practice how to exert greater effectiveness. Not long after Peter and Jane walked out of the Umbrella office, Hill Reese appeared in the office. He looked at Peter's registered information and nodded slightly. "That's right, it's him. I didn't expect him to be delivered to my door." "Sir, do it now?" a subordinate asked in a low voice. "No, it would be too ostentatious to do it during the day. Just wait until night. Besides, you haven't noticed that the boy's body has changed a lot. He may have gained a lot of benefits from his genetic body." Hillis narrowed his eyes slightly and said word by word. "Yes, let's get ready now." The subordinates left in a hurry. Late at night. Peter nodded when he heard Aunt May's sound of sleeping, and was about to change into his battlesuit. He has become obsessed with the feeling of being a hero. Although there is a female Spider-Man competing with him now, Peter is actually not too disgusted with it. The competition between the two during this period has made Peter realize that the female Spider-Man is a sharp-tongued but not a bad person at heart. Being a lonely hero is very tiring, but Peter is quite happy to have a fellow traveler. At some point, a faint fragrance floated in the room. It was so light that it was almost inaudible. Peter suddenly rubbed his forehead, a little sleepy. He was a little strange. When Spider-Man had been accustomed to moving at night for so many days, how could he feel sleepy? Logically speaking, you should be more energetic at night. Wrong. Peter was shocked. Spider telepathy detected someone peeking at him. He immediately noticed the strange aroma in the room. Peter jumped out of the window. The target has spotted us, prepare to attack. There was a loud shout from nowhere, and as soon as Peter landed on the ground, his eyes were enveloped by a dazzling light. He raised his head and saw a group of heavily armed soldiers on the opposite side. The tactical flashlights in the hands of these soldiers made it difficult for him to open his eyes. Peter was about to resist when his body lost strength. Before he was completely dizzy, he only heard a grunt. Spider-Boy? Ridiculous. Then Peter fell into darkness. Chapter 16. Jiang knocked the gangster in front of him to the ground with 3 strikes, 5 strikes, and 2 strikes. The 7th one is really good. She hummed a little tune, shot out spider webs and leaped to the top of the building, taking a short rest. What's going on tonight? Peter didn't come out. Jane felt a little strange, but didn't pay much attention to it. It was probably because Peter had been very tired recently and was absent from work tonight. I've decided on tomorrow's headlines. Taking a deep breath, Jane started her actions again. Early morning. As soon as Jane and Kerrigan walked into the classroom together, they found a fashionably dressed woman standing in the classroom, talking to the teacher. Aunt May, why are you here at school? Jane was stunned and stepped forward to say hello. Mary Jane's Aunt Anna is a good friend of Aunt May, and the two are relatively close. Hearing Jane's voice, Aunt May turned around with tears on her face. Mary, Peter. Peter is missing. What? Jane was shocked, and Kerrigan behind her frowned slightly. He was normal after he came home last night. When I asked him to get up for breakfast this morning, I found that the house was empty. I just asked the teacher, and Peter didn't come to school either. Aunt May cried so hard. She and Ben regarded Peter as their own. Not long after Ben died, now this nephew who was like a son also disappeared. The successive blows made Aunt May a little nervous. Jane looked at Kerrigan with wide eyes. Kerrigan shook her head slightly, stepped forward and handed out a handkerchief. Madam, maybe Peter just went out to play and hasn't come to school yet. No, Peter never goes out at night. Aunt May took the handkerchief and wiped her tears. Peter is so good, he never goes out in the middle of the night. Both Jane and Kerrigan were speechless. This Aunt May really knows nothing about Peter. Madam, Mr. Parker hasn't come to school yet. I think you shouldn't worry yet. Maybe he overslept somewhere? If Mr. Parker comes to school, I will notify you as soon as possible, okay? The teacher whispered. Okay, please. Seeing that the search was hopeless, Aunt May could only go back and wait for news. News of Peter Parker's disappearance soon spread throughout the school. The classmates in the class were talking a lot. Although many people didn't think highly of Peter, they didn't want to hear bad news. However, until school ended, Peter still did not show up at school. Jane, come with me. After school, Kerrigan pulled Jane over, got in the car and drove away. Queen, what do you think happened to Peter? Jane's face was solemn. Either you get caught or you die. Kerrigan said coldly, Peter's ability comes from a nuclear radiation spider. Ordinary spiders will definitely not be contaminated with nuclear radiation. It is estimated that the person who developed that spider has found Peter. What? Jane was stunned. Is this ability so dangerous? Kerrigan showed a smile. That's his, not yours. What I gave you doesn't have so many problems. Jane breathed a sigh of relief. The two of them came all the way to the suburbs. Come with me. Kerrigan got out of the car and came to a forest, and Jane followed curiously. Buzz, the ground shook slightly, and a pothole slowly appeared. Kerrigan walked into the pit and glanced at the stunned Jane above. Don't be stupid, this is our home. Oh, Here it comes. Jane followed Kerrigan, and the pothole slowly disappeared again. The light will be a little dark, you need to get used to it. Kerrigan said softly and continued walking down. Jiang followed suit step by step. The further she walked, the wider her pupils opened. I saw that this underground base was filled with all kinds of ferocious insects with different looks. The Zerg were busy at work and bowed their heads to show respect when they saw Kerrigan. Jane suppressed the fear in her heart. It turned out that these bugs looked a bit scary. One of the Zerg showed its fangs to Jane in a friendly manner, which made her feel a little numb. But Jane could tell that these Zerg were indeed not hostile to her. Kerrigan took Jane to a hall, a very magnificent hall. Although it is an underground Zerg base, there is no shortage of electronic products here. The high-level lamps on the top floor of the hall are extremely dazzling. I really don't know how these Zerg can provide power underground, which makes Jane speechless. Kerrigan walked to her throne, which was a magnificent seat. Two worker bees pushed a stone bench over. Sit down, this is my underground base in New York. Kerrigan motioned for Jane to sit down. I'm going to teach you a new ability. Kerrigan frowned slightly. Peter's current ability should be pretty good, but he still fell into the trap. Then those people are likely to target you, who is also a Spider-Man, so I want to strengthen your combat effectiveness now, so that even if you are attacked, you still have the ability to wait for our support. Jane nodded slightly. Thank you, Queen, for your concern. What is ability? This ability is called Chinook Power. It has many functions and can effectively improve your combat effectiveness, even like this. Kerrigan didn't speak, but these words went directly into Jane's mind. Jane's eyes widened in disbelief. This is one of the functions of psychic energy, spiritual communication. As long as the other party is an intelligent creature, psychic energy can communicate with it. Kerrigan smiled. But Peter sighed. I have sent the Zerg to search. Don't worry, this is the strength of the Zerg. Don't act these days unless you have to. After the spiritual power is taught to you, practice more. If you don't have any practice, you can come to this base to practice. The Queen will open the door for you. Kerrigan whispered. Yes, Queen. After learning some psychic methods, Jane began to contact, while Kerrigan questioned the Queen through the psychic network. How's the check going? Queen, there is a lot of traffic near the target's house, so we can't act rashly. After a day, the smell has almost dissipated, making the investigation a little difficult. An insect queen appeared, leaned down and said. Is that so? Let's check first. Since there is a Spider-Man, they will definitely be interested in the female Spider-Man. Kerrigan whispered. When Peter woke up, he found himself tied to the hospital bed, surrounded by a group of people in white coats. He was so frightened that he yelled and was then gagged. Outside the ward, the excited researcher held up a report board and shouted at Hillis. Sir, this experimental subject is really amazing. It can be perfectly combined with the toxins of nuclear radiated spiders. His current physical fitness is more than 3 times that of humans. Hill's smile was extremely enthusiastic. Yeah, I really didn't expect to get such a treasure. The researcher pushed up his glasses. However, I think we still need more experimental data. One experimental subject is not enough, right? Hilreath showed a sinister smile. It doesn't matter, maybe that spider bit more than one person. Catch everyone present at the time. Chapter 17. Tony Stark hasn't been idle lately either. After openly announcing that he was Iron Man, he became a frequent headliner. Not only did he go around fighting criminals, he also became more public. Whether it's lifestyle or something else. Definitely, he has never given up on the design of anti-Zerg armor. Ethan frowned and walked to him with Tony's physical report. Tony, please don't wear the suit anymore. Tony, who had just finished the mission, was stunned. Hey Ethan, do you know what you are talking about? Everyone needs me an Iron Man. But can Iron Man just ignore his own life? Ethan shouted sternly, your body is already showing symptoms of palladium poisoning. If you use the armor again, it will only make your poisoning worse. Tony's pupil shrank. No, this is impossible. Impossible. Take a look for yourself. If you don't wear the armor, you can survive for the rest of your life. If you put it on, your life will start counting down. Ethan handed Tony the physical report and sighed, I didn't expect that this would happen. Tony looked at the report with a heavy heart. I have just found the direction of my life, I have just wanted to make a big move, and I am going to die young? No, this is not my future. He pushed Ethan away and ran to the basement without looking back, preparing to study how to solve this problem. Tony sat on the sofa dejectedly, his hair messy, covering his head and saying nothing. 5 days have passed and he still has not found a way to slow down the palladium poisoning. He can only survive with the inhibitory drug developed by Ethan. Ethan walked to him worriedly. Tony, why don't you go out for a walk? Maybe it's better to relax. Tony nodded silently, stood up, put on his armor and flew away without washing up. Ethan sighed slightly. This kind of blow was indeed very fatal to Tony. Another few days passed. Kerrigan stopped practicing, leaned on the windowsill, and stretched her body gracefully. To describe it in poetry, it is like the oriole chatting outside the blue gauze window. The sound sounds like a sad spring evening, the bright eyes are as bright as snow, and the autumn waves are as clear as stars in frost. The graceful scenery reflects the clouds, the wind is full of spring light, the brightness is incomparable, and the demeanor is more touching. The TV that was on was playing a piece of news. Iron Man Tony Stark's recent lifestyle issues have surprised the public. He seems to have returned to the Playboy. Today is his Iron Man concert special. Now let's get through to the on-site reporters. After hearing the news, Kerrigan thought for a moment. It seems that Iron Man's palladium poisoning has already appeared, otherwise he wouldn't suddenly become like this. The corner of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. Not bad. It's better to add icing on the cake than to provide help in the snow. Waking up from the gentle land of luxury and wealth, Tony dropped a wad of money, scratched his head and broke away from the embrace of a group of supermodels. Just as we were about to take off and go home, J.A.R.V.I.S called out. Sir, we have found traces of the Zerg Queen. She is 100 meters away from your location at 6 o'clock. Tony was stunned. He had not yet decided whether to cooperate with the Zerg. What was the matter with this queen coming to him? He didn't hesitation and flew directly in front of Kerrigan. Today, Kerrigan is dressed quite dignified, like an elegant noble. Nice to meet you, Your Majesty. Looking at Kerrigan, Tony's eyes flashed with appreciation. Although I don't know what the true identity of this Zerg Queen is, her current appearance is really beautiful and very in line with human aesthetics. Tony Stark, you've been poisoned. The corners of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. Tony's heart sank, but he still forced a smile and said, Your Majesty, are you kidding me? My physical condition is very good. I just competed with more than a dozen supermodels in a row. Ha Tony, don't hide it. I said that the Zerg are masters of genes. Your physical condition cannot be hidden from my eyes. Kerrigan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. If those things flow to your heart, then you will really be hopeless. Tony's Adam's apple moved. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, Your Majesty, if you are here to see my joke, then please go back. I don't have that kind of leisure. Listen Tony, cooperate with me, psychic energy can cure your disease. Kerrigan chuckled. Tony raised his head suddenly. Really? His voice was trembling, and he was obviously very excited. Over the past few days, he had tried countless methods to find a cure for his illness, but he still found nothing. It was precisely because of this that he began to act unruly again. If labor and capital are going to die, can't we enjoy enjoyment? Do you think I need to lie? Kerrigan's smile was so beautiful. Tony's palms were upward, staring intently at the glass floating in the sky above his palms. Chili Pepper and Ethan's eyes widened. The glass shook slightly, and Tony's hand shook. Boom. The glass fell and he couldn't catch it for a moment, and it shattered. Tony's forehead was sweating slightly and he was a little disappointed. Ba bang bang. Kerrigan on the opposite side applauded slightly. Very good. As a beginner in psychic abilities, your progress is quite good. Thank you for your compliment, Your Majesty. Tony was a little embarrassed, and he thought Kerrigan was trying to comfort him. Practice more. The meditation method I give you can improve your spiritual power. Also, everyone's spiritual power focuses on different directions. You have to learn to find your own direction. Kerrigan smiled. Direction. Everyone was a little confused. Yes, direction. Some people can use spiritual energy to greatly enhance their physique and become super warriors. Some people can use spiritual energy to release powerful spiritual energy storms. Others can condense spiritual energy into weapons and become invincible. The light blade needs to be developed by yourself. Spiritual energy is omnipotent. Kerrigan stood up. The Zerg's chips have been paid, now it's up to you to develop a new energy device as soon as possible. I will not let you down, Your Majesty. Tony whispered. Tony, do you feel better? Ethan said softly. Well, I feel a lot more relaxed. I probably don't have to eat those weird things anymore. Tony looked relaxed, and the psychic power really made a big stone fall in his heart. Pepper boldly asked, Your Majesty the Queen, what is the direction of your psychic energy? I know a little bit about everything. Kerrigan said with a chuckle. Ethan suddenly said, Your Majesty, there is something I need to report to you. A few days ago, Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. came to ask me about other intelligent races on the Earth. That black braised egg? What did you tell him? Kerrigan asked with interest. Black braised eggs. The three of them were stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter. I have to say that the name Kerrigan is quite appropriate. Please rest assured, Your Majesty, I didn't say anything. Ethan put away his smile and said. But Kerrigan shook his head. Ethan, you are still too young for Nick Fury. I'm thinking that he will be here soon. The three of them were stunned when they heard the voice of Jarvis Mr. Stark. S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury is waiting outside the door, followed by Agent Phil Coulson and others. Little Pepper was shocked. Your Majesty, please come with me, there is a secret passage. Ethan and Tony were also panicked. This place might become a battlefield. Don't worry, he doesn't have the guts. Kerrigan showed a smile. Just in time, I also want to talk to this S.H.I.E.L.D. director. The three of them looked at each other and saw that Kerrigan was determined, so they had no choice but to do so. Tony coughed and said, J.A.R.V.I.S, please Mr. Fury and the others come in. Footsteps sounded, and Nick Fury slowly walked into the room with a few people. A man with short hair, carrying a bow on his back, looked around warily, while Agent Phil Coulson smiled and waved to everyone. Fury didn't even look at the three people who were at a loss, but looked at Kerrigan intently. Your Excellency, what is your name? Chapter 18. In fact, Nick Fury didn't expect Kerrigan to be here. He came today with the intention of giving Tony some drugs that S.H.I.E.L.D. specially developed for him to inhibit palladium poisoning, so that Tony could join SHIELD. Unexpectedly, he met Kerrigan. Are you questioning me? Kerrigan's eyes turned cold. The atmosphere suddenly cooled down. Phil Coulson touched his waist with his right hand, and the short-haired man also touched his bow. Little Chili Pepper and Ethan didn't dare to express their anger. Tony gritted his teeth and said with a smile. We are all friends, please sit down, please sit down. However, Kerrigan and Nick Fury ignored him. Nick Fury squinted his eyes and stared at Kerrigan with one eye. You are a guest. As the host, shouldn't I ask who you are? Since when has the beautiful country represented the world? Kerrigan chuckled lightly, brushing the ends of her hair with her right hand, her eyes extremely cold. You want to challenge the majesty of a king, don't you? Everyone just felt that their bodies became a little heavier. This is not an illusion. Phil Coulson was sweating profusely, and his hands felt as if they were weighted heavily. Hawkeye, the short-haired archer, bit his lip and bent his knees slightly, as if he was about to kneel down. Looking at Pepper and Ethan, they were already sitting on the ground. Tony was doing well, still gritting his teeth and persisting. Nick Fury's legs were also shaking, but his expression remained normal, as if he didn't feel any pressure at all. Kerrigan's eyes flashed with admiration. Interesting, human, you have a strong will. The stress disappears instantly. Everyone seemed to be amnesty. Phil Coulson and Hawkeye lay on the ground and gasped for air. Tony sat down on the sofa. Nick Fury's face shook, but he still stood still. You have my approval, human, and you may ask me 3 questions. Kerrigan sat down gracefully and chuckled. Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing on Earth? Fury's tone softened a lot. I am Kerrigan, the Blade Queen of the Zerg. I come from another world and come to Earth to travel. What's the answer? The corners of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. Zerg, I understand, please, and your race, please don't cause chaos in this world. Fury bowed slightly. You can rest assured that I like this world very much and will not destroy it. Kerrigan's eyes flashed with a smile. Fury took a deep breath. If there is a crisis in this world, will you take action? It depends on the situation. Definitely, you need to pay a price that satisfies me. After all, I am a guest. When the host asks the guest to make a move, he still needs to show the proper expression. What do you want? The Zerg are eager to evolve. We are born for evolution, so we need many novel gene fragments to promote our evolution. Kerrigan stood up. Definitely, anything else is fine, as long as I'm satisfied. Thank you for your tolerance. May I ask where your Zerg are? Fury said softly. Kerrigan raised her head slightly and said, you don't want to know. Kerrigan left. Ethan rubbed his legs, his teeth chattering. God, I feel like all the bones in my body were screaming just now. Who is not? I feel that His Majesty can crush my armor into powder. Tony frowned as he enjoyed Pepper's massage. I think your Majesty's dress is very fashionable. Maybe I should ask her how to dress up. Pepper muttered. Several people were stunned. This was indeed true. Judging from the appearance alone, Kerrigan was indeed very popular. Even Hawkeye, who always liked to look at people with their nostrils, could not be hostile to Kerrigan. What kind of cooperation did you reach with His Majesty? Fury sitting aside whispered. The three of them looked at each other, wondering if they could say anything. A voice sounded in Tony's heart, tell him, it's okay. Tony was shocked, it was this weird ability again. Don't panic. This is one of the basic uses of psychic energy. It's just spiritual communication. You can do it in the future too. Your Majesty, is it really okay to tell S.H.I.E.L.D? Tony frowned. You just need to make sure that only Nick Fury knows about it. Also, let me tell you something. There is something going on inside SHIELD. Tony narrowed his eyes and glanced at Nick Fury, who was waiting for his answer. Your Majesty means that Nick Fury is worthy of belief. He glanced at Hawkeye and Phil Coulson standing at the door and raised his eyebrows. Nick Fury understood and motioned for the two of them to go out. After the two of them went out, Tony spoke. I developed new energy sources for the Zerg, and they teach me a power called Shinix. Psychic power. Nick Fury was stunned, never heard of it. According to His Majesty, Shinix energy is a power that originates from the user's mind, so it tends to focus on spiritual effects. Definitely, as long as Shinix energy is powerful enough, it can change reality. After Tony revealed the basic information about his psychic abilities, Nick Fury nodded, it doesn't look abnormal. It's also a good thing to enhance your physical ability. He stood up and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, for disturbing your practice. It's out of the way. Tony smiled. You are the first person to come into contact with the Zerg. Do you have any more information about them? After all, they are outsiders. It is always good to be careful. Nick Fury whispered. Tony's mind sank, and he wanted to tell Kerrigan. But I only got an answer of it's up to you random. Tony was silent for a moment. It seemed that the Zerg were so powerful that they could ignore the beautiful country with the strongest military on the planet. However, such a powerful ally is always better than an enemy. He took a deep breath and began to tell Nick Fury something he knew. On the other side, Kerrigan lazily turned on the TV after returning to the hotel. Today's contact with SHIELD. Although it is a little early, it is not bad. After all, we will have to deal with it sooner or later. Nick Fury is pretty good. As for the Zerg information in Tony's hands, Kerrigan didn't take it seriously. So what if you know? The emergence of new Zerg races is far faster than their collection of information. While Tony and others were chatting, Fury remembered the main purpose of his visit. He coughed and said, by the way Tony, we have specially developed a drug for you that can inhibit palladium poisoning. Although the taste is a bit hard to describe, you will definitely need it. Fury thought Tony would be surprised, but Tony's expression changed, you're spying on me. Ahem, this is just in case, just in case. Nick Fury apologized quickly, which somehow calmed down Tony's anger. However, the medicine was not delivered. No need, Director Nick Fury. After learning psychic powers, I no longer need to be afraid of palladium poisoning. Tony looked proud, while Fury's face darkened a lot. Definitely, he was black, and no one else could tell. Kerrigan could feel that there were some people of unknown origin around her recently. And these guys are not from SHIELD. They seem to be affiliated with other forces. Nick Fury will investigate Kerrigan, but never in such a blatant way. Such as now. Madam, could you please come with us? Looking at the man in front of him and the hand hidden on his waist, Kerrigan's eyes turned slightly cold. What if I say no? Then I can only say I'm sorry, although I don't like attacking ladies. The man opposite squeezed out a few words and suddenly struck Kerrigan's waist with his right hand. Chapter 19. However, Kerrigan is faster than him. In just a moment, the man's right hand was cut off. The severe pain caused the man to lie on the ground and cry, "Ah! My hand, my hand!" Kerrigan's face was solemn. "How dare you, you want to touch me with your dirty hands? Get her! Fire tranquilizer bombs!" Just as the man fell, dozens of soldiers in combat uniforms rushed over from the other side. Hearing the noise, the surrounding people ran away. Doesn't it look like some kind of secret agency is arresting people and waiting to die? Court death! Kerrigan was furious, glared, and instantly exploded the attacking soldiers into blood mist. She walked up to the wailing man, glanced at the logo embroidered on the man's inner lining. "Hey, protective umbrella? I almost forgot about you, but I didn't expect you to be sent to your door. It just so happens that the genes near New York are almost collected, and the insect swarm goes out to find them and tear them apart." Kerrigan casually beat the man to a pulp, ending his wails. She immediately gave an order and the operation began in the underground insect nest located on the outskirts of New York City. The citizens of New York City only felt that the whole earth was shaking slightly. Everyone was stunned, and then quickly began to take refuge. This situation is completely like an earthquake. What? New York City earthquake? Tony was stunned when he received the news. No, why didn't we feel the earthquake here? How far is it from New York? Sir, it's a little strange. No earthquake source has been detected. It doesn't seem to be an earthquake. J.A.R.V.I.S reports. Not an earthquake. Ethan frowned, then slapped his thigh. Underground? What's wrong? It's the Queen of the Zerg, it's the Zerg, damn, what happened? Didn't we just reach a cooperation agreement? Why are the Zerg active? Quick, contact S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony quickly ordered J.A.R.V.I.S to contact Nick Fury, while he began to contact Kerrigan. Nick Fury was also shocked. Why did he change his mind as soon as he agreed? As soon as Tony called Kerrigan, he heard a cold voice on the other side. Explain. Your Majesty, the Zerg are out. If anyone dares to attack me, let S.H.I.E.L.D treat it like nothing happened, or I will demolish their building. Tony was shocked. He didn't know what kind of god he was, and he had the audacity to provoke this person. Tony hung up the phone and explained the situation to Nick Fury through gritted teeth. Now we're in big trouble. Nick Fury had a headache. He had just found out about Kerrigan entering New York City to study, and he just thought it was because His Majesty wanted to experience human student life, so something big happened that night. Quickly, check to see if the research institute that cooperates with us has any special operations in New York. Phil Coulson ran out quickly and ran back quickly. Report, nothing unusual. It's not ours? Could it be the military? What a headache. Nick Fury scratches his head. The military's S.H.I.E.L.D really can't reach it. I can only wish them good luck and hope it doesn't cause too much trouble. He sighed. In this case, he would be a real fool to declare war with Kerrigan. He should inform the military first. Hey? Why are we doing research in a busy city like New York? Are you crazy? The military bosses who received the news yelled at Nick Fury. Not you? Then who is it? Nick Fury was dumbfounded. The military was also fooled. Several people stood up together. Someone dares to cause trouble under our noses. Umbrella New York Underground Base. Hillis had a headache. When I visited a science and technology exhibition, most of the people who might have been bitten by the spider were caught, but they all gained little. He stared at the screen, which showed a man's perspective. Opposite stood a beautiful woman. This was the last target, Sarah Louise Kerrigan. As soon as the two said a few words, the communication was suddenly interrupted, followed by wailing, and then darkness. What's the situation? Restart communication quickly. Hilreath shouted excitedly. All the teams in the outside world immediately moved towards the target area to round up. Be careful, the target may be dangerous. He had just finished giving the order and his eyes were full of joy. Sure enough, it was really good luck to catch another person who could perfectly integrate the gene body. Boom boom boom, the walls of the extremely solid base trembled slightly for some unknown reason. Earthquake. No, the base's earthquake protection is very strong, and our place is not an earthquake zone, right? A group of soldiers were whispering, and Hillis's face was tense. Keep monitoring, and stop talking nonsense. Kerrigan tapped her toes on the dirt in the tunnel and led the swarm forward at high speed. At the moment, she was full of rage and just wanted to tear anyone who dared to challenge her majesty into pieces. Through the guidance of her psychic powers, she came all the way to the outer wall of the New York Umbrella underground base. Looking at the metal wall in front of him, Kerrigan sneered, "I didn't come to you, but you came to mess with me first. Hydralisk, break through this pile of iron shells." With a command, the nearly 3-meter-tall hydralisks rushed out of the insect swarm and spit out extremely sharp spikes at the metal wall. The metal walls were like pieces of paper, quilled with spikes. Hundreds of springtails slammed into those spikes, completely smashing them to pieces. People inside the umbrella base screamed, because they saw helplessly that the extremely solid metal exterior wall was torn apart by some kind of attack, and then densely packed giant insects rushed out of the hole. "Damn it, fight, fight!" Hilrys shouted loudly. "Quick, contact support!" He didn't see a figure rushing out of the hole and leaping into the air, and an invisible wave instantly invaded the entire base. As soon as the people in the main control room connected to the communication, the entire base's motors roared and exploded into pieces. "What's the situation? Start the backup power quickly." The backup power supply was also destroyed. Oops! The experimental subject's restraint failed, and one of the experimental subjects escaped. "Hurry and release the tyrant to confront the enemy!" Hillis shouted, but it was too late. The entire base was plunged into darkness. In the darkness, the soldiers were raising their guns and firing wildly at the bugs. But in the dark, the Zerg are invincible. The soldiers who lost their vision could only be lambs under the Zerg's fangs and claws. They were separated and their blood spattered everywhere. "Help! I've been hit, help me! Spare me, please!" Screams, gunshots, roars, and screams formed an elegant symphony. All the researchers were shivering, lying on the ground and not daring to move. After a long time, the symphony was finally finished. Dada's footsteps sounded in the passage. The visitor walked very slowly, not in a hurry, and knocked on the door politely. "Anyone there?" Kerrigan chuckled and pushed open the lab door, and the lights came on again. The researchers did not dare to look up and could only see a pair of extremely perfect legs walking in front of them. Kerrigan walked into the lab. "Queen, we found this human pretending to be dead, and these guys, do you want to kill them together?" A hydralisk bit a human body covered in blood and threw it in front of Kerrigan, then looked at the trembling researchers. An insect queen also walked over slowly. "Queen, we found something interesting." Chapter 20. Kerrigan raised her hand slightly, and the man's head, whose face was covered in blood, was slightly raised by invisible power. Looking at the badge and ID on his chest, Kerrigan smiled disdainfully. "Commander Hilrys of the Umbrella New Vietnam base? He is still a big fish. It's a pity that it is useless. Let's kill him." As commanded. Just as Hydralisk was about to take action, Hillis shouted, "Who are you? You can't kill me. I'm from the Umbrella Company. I'm from the military. If you kill me, you won't get anything good. You have no right to know who I am, interesting, and dare to threaten me." Kerrigan laughed angrily. "I changed my mind. I won't kill you. Queen, take him back to the incubation pool. Don't the people in the Umbrella Company like to capture people for experiments? Then let's transform him as ours, the author's first experimental subject." "As you command, Queen." The Queen of Insects slowly approached, knocked Hilrys unconscious, and carried him away. Kerrigan has always wanted to develop a new Zerg race that can parasitize humans for a long time, so as to achieve the purpose of controlling the Umbrella. However, due to energy problems, the insect swarm has no energy to evolve for the time being, and it is also extremely short of human experimental subjects. Kerrigan had no intention of taking action against ordinary humans. After all, she had already negotiated terms with the Ancient One and Nick Fury. But this group of protective guys came to her door to seek death, so don't blame her for being rude. She glanced at the researchers on the ground again. "Take them back with you to speed up the research progress, do you understand?" "Yes." A young researcher suddenly shouted, "No, no, please spare me, I am willing to work for you, Please don't send me to do experiments. Kerrigan raised her eyebrows and said, Human, raise your head. The researcher looked up tremblingly. At first glance, you look like a person who is greedy for life and afraid of death. That's not bad. The Zerg tribe needs people like you. Open your mouth. Kerrigan raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and a larva condensed on her right side. This is the ability she unlocked when she upgraded to 10.2 integration, parasitism. Although it cannot be done like in the later stages of the game, where the parasitized bugs can directly develop into the mother bug, it is still okay to kill people instantly. The man opened his mouth and the larvae quickly jumped in. He strangled his throat, but he still felt the bug go straight into his stomach. Be at ease and obedient, work for the Zerg, and the larvae will not activate. If you dare to have second thoughts, disembowel me, do you understand? The man nodded repeatedly, fearing that his belly would be opened. He introduced himself as Jerry, a researcher who had just joined. As soon as he lamented the generous salary of Umbrella, he encountered Kerrigan's surprise attack, which was indeed a bit miserable. Other researchers also wanted to surrender like Jerry, but Kerrigan just sneered. All I need is a dog. After dealing with the problem of the prisoners, Jerry diligently took Kerrigan around the base, introducing Kerrigan to the samples and projects stored in the base one by one. Kerrigan saw a lot of interesting things. A dazzling array of lab samples and blood samples, some sort of white flour in a petri dish, and definitely, Peter Parker. Peter is really miserable now. There were several knife marks on the left half of the body, and burn marks on the right half of the body. Facing Kerrigan's gaze, Jerry didn't dare to look into her eyes at all. This is to test his cell strength and so on. Humans are truly terrifying creatures. Kerrigan waved, and a springtail came running over. Send him back to the insect nest. Fortunately, this kid's genes are mutated, otherwise he would have died long ago. Several springtails carried Peter and ran away. The Worm Queen takes Kerrigan with her and sees something interesting. Looking at these huge amounts of bound flesh, the corners of Kerrigan's mouth raised slightly. Although the genes of these guys are still very defective, as long as they are developed a little, they will have very good combat effectiveness. Acquire special genes, mutated chameleon gene fragment, integration increased to 10.3%. Acquire special genes, rabies virus modified gene fragments, integration increased to 10.4%. Acquire special genes, leech virus modified gene fragments, integration increased to 10.5%, really not bad. Kerrigan was very satisfied with the harvest. From the Umbrella New U underground base alone, she collected nearly 50 special gene fragments, not to mention countless precious materials in the base, and the integration level soared to 15%. Congratulations to the host, the integration has been increased to 15%, and the Zerg hero unit has been unlocked. You can summon a hero unit in any insect nest. Currently, the hero slot is unlocked. 1. The optional heroes have been listed for you: Zerg Genetic Engineer Abathur, Zerg Mother Zagara, Primitive Zerg Dihaka, Zerg Cyborg Alexei Stukov, Primitive Zerg Balak, Zerg Lord Agdra, Zerg Lord Kriz. Unlocked unit, Zolwen, the Zongzu. Huge amounts of surprises surrounded Kerrigan. Finally know how to unlock the Zerg hero. Protective Umbrella, great place, I will go there often in the future. She continued to look at the heart of the swarm. Buildings unlocked, Flying Dragon Tower, Tunnel Network. Please note that your hatchery needs to be upgraded before it can be built. Yes, a lot has been gained. Kerrigan nodded with satisfaction. Definitely, Kerrigan is also thinking about how to end this. She dialed Nick Fury's contact information. Oh? The Protective Umbrella is not an organization between you and the military. Yes, Your Majesty, I'm sorry, we don't know where this organization came from, and we are starting to investigate. Nick Fury on the other end of the phone sounded extremely embarrassed. Under the noses of the dignified SHIELD and the military, a research institute appeared with troops. This really slapped both sides in the face. Since this has nothing to do with either of you, then it will be no problem for me to take action on the Protective Umbrella. Kerrigan chuckled. Ahem, Your Majesty, after all, the Protective Umbrella is an institution on the land of our beautiful country. Please leave the Protective Umbrella to us. We will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Nick Fury said quickly. With so many resources in hand, Umbrella cannot fall directly into the hands of the Zerg. You are too late. I have already taken over the Umbrella Nio base, and it belongs to the Zerg now. Kerrigan's voice was a little cold. What, you want to start a war with the Zerg? Nick Fury is a little cold-hearted. How many minutes has it been? An underground base with security forces is gone? What a bunch of rubbish. Nick Fury was so angry that his teeth were itching, but he could only smile along with him. Your Majesty, since you have taken it, it can only be yours, but please leave the other institutions of the Umbrella to us, okay? What if I say no? Kerrigan raised her eyebrows slightly. I found a lot of interesting things here, which are very useful to the Zerg. Nick Fury gritted his teeth. I understand, Your Majesty. How about you leave the other institutions of the Umbrella to us, and we will share all the special genes obtained with you. Chapter 21. The senior executives of Umbrella probably did not expect that their fate would be arranged by others inexplicably. The state machinery of the beautiful country took action together, and soon dug out many inside stories about the Umbrella Company. Ms. Falk, these crazy guys. Nick Fury looked at the report in his hand, his scalp numb. Under the eyes of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military, Umbrella Corporation has developed into a powerful group with nearly 7 large underground bases and 23 offices around the world. What is even more troublesome is that these guys are engaged in the development of biological weapons, medical development and other projects. It has very strong financial resources, huge strength within the military, and even has contacts with the direction of the White Palace. It is precisely for this reason that no one has discovered the actions of the protective umbrella. Because they have their own bigger umbrella. The military bosses and Nick Fury all have the same expression. Headache. If the rotten flesh grows on your body, big problems will arise if you check it. But these guys have already extended their hands into projects that they dare not think of. It will definitely not work if they don't check it. In the end, it was the head of the military who slapped the table. Check hard. If this pile of rotten meat is allowed to develop, the situation will be out of control. Umbrella already has its own troops, which is really riding on the head of the military. Kerrigan arranged for the insect queens to occupy the Umbrella New York underground base and began to transform it. The guy named Jerry was quite attentive. Not only did he not give in, he also boldly asked to stay at the base to assist the queens in their research. This surprised Kerrigan. Such a good dog was not easy to find. Kerrigan arranged for Peter to be sent to the door of the nearest hospital, and she was too lazy to care about the life and death of this brat. Now she has more important things to do. Awaken the Zerg hero, Engineer Abathur. If you want the Zerg to accelerate its development, Abathur's existence is very necessary. She returned to the hive, ready to see how the heart of the swarm awakened Abathur. Awaken the Zerg hero unit, Genetic Engineer Abathur. Please note that this option is irreversible. When the hero unit dies, you can use resources at the Zerg altar to resurrect it. Resurrection will take a certain amount of time. Kerrigan was a little surprised. Can she still buy a living? Theoretically, these Zerg heroes are immortal. Confirm wake up. She said without hesitation. It has been confirmed that the Zerg altar is being gathered. A blue shadow appeared in front of Kerrigan, slowly condensing into a square building. The altar has been constructed and is being transmitted. There was a flash of blue light, and huge amounts of Zerg appeared in front of Kerrigan. Its head is very large, and its appearance is one of the most ugly among the Zerg races. A few drops of strange liquid drip from its mouth parts from time to time, and it makes a squeaking sound when it falls on the ground. Ah, it feels so good to be awake. It's so nice to see you again, Queen. As soon as Abathur appeared, he saluted Kerrigan. It lowered its big head slightly, put its 4 limbs together, and was polite. Kerrigan could feel that there was some kind of connection between herself and Abathur. It seemed that, whenever she thought about it, Abathur would die. She was quite satisfied. This should be the authority of the heart of the swarm. Suddenly, Abathur hesitated. Queen, why do you give me a different feeling? Kerrigan's heart skipped a beat and she said calmly, oh? What do you think is different about me? Abathur scratched his head. I'm sorry, I can't describe this feeling. It seems like you have become more real. Kerrigan slowly sat down on her throne and said, don't worry about this. Now, I want to ask you some questions and tell you something. I'm really surprised. Is this already another world? Abathur's tone was quite surprising. In this case, we should devour this planet immediately and let them become nutrients for the evolution of our Zerg race. This planet is not simple, put this idea away. Kerrigan said softly, the Zerg's previous style must be abandoned. If you don't want to be a thorn in everyone's eyes and a thorn in the flesh, you must make changes. Abathur lowered his head slightly. Abathur respects your will, Queen, and I will immediately start developing new genes for the Zerg. Well, here are the special gene fragments I have collected these days. Take a look. With that said, Kerrigan transferred the large amount of genetic data in her hand to Abathur. Abathur looked at these genes, and his forelimbs, which were as steady as a mountain, could no longer close. My queen, how is this possible, that these genes can have so many variants? This is this strange world. Now you understand why I don't just invade this time with my army. I understand. Indeed, these genes are enough to show how powerful this world is. Please forgive me for being rude, Queen, I can't wait to start researching. Abathur was extremely excited. The insect hive will support your research. If you have any questions, please inform me at any time. Kerrigan waved her hand, and the insect mothers gathered next to Abathur, waiting for his orders. I'll leave this to you, Abathur, don't let me down. Don't worry, Queen, Abathur will always be loyal to you. Abathur left with the insect mothers, and Kerrigan returned to his hotel. The increase in integration has given her a lot of benefits, and she needs to digest them. Both S.H.I.E.L.D and the military forgot one thing. Protective Umbrella is not a good man who will obediently hand over his base and all information. Although the White Palace, due to pressure from SHIELD and the military, could only say that they would no longer be involved in the matter, the Umbrella's own security force still caused a headache for SHIELD and the military. What makes them even more troublesome is that there is also trouble within the military. Although some of the Umbrellas have been controlled, there are also many people who are hiding and spreading news to the Umbrellas. The military was the most unlucky. Several operations suffered setbacks. Although the umbrella base of the beautiful country was basically taken care of, the cost was not small. While S.H.I.E.L.D spent a long time to fix all of Umbrella's overseas bases, the military was still fighting over Umbrella's last base in the beautiful country and its largest main base, the Raccoon City base. The battle at the Raccoon City base is extremely fierce, because Umbrella has basically taken over the city as its own, and the citizens and officials in the city are all Umbrella Company employees. Few people know that this once prosperous small city will turn into a battlefield, and it is still on the territory of the beautiful country. Agent Phil Coulson looked at the Umbrella staff being escorted out and breathed a sigh of relief. It's finally over. Umbrella's overseas bases have basically been captured by them. These guys have almost extended their tentacles to the Furry Bear country. Fortunately, they took action early. If they went to the Furry Bear to establish a base, then S.H.I.E.L.D would really be a little bit better. There is no solution. Sir, the Umbrella overseas base has been cleared. He immediately contacted Nick Fury. Nick Fury had a solemn look on his face. Well, leave the aftermath to other agents. You should immediately bring people to support the military. Something big has happened in Raccoon City. Chapter 22. Something really bad is going on in Raccoon City. The military was quite fierce, and despite a fierce battle, they still managed to beat the Umbrella security forces to pieces. Umbrella saw something was not going well and responded quickly. They pulled the remaining troops into the base and sent a bunch of containers up there. The military representative responsible for the military operation against Raccoon City was the famous General Thaddeus E. Ross, also known as General Thunderbolt Ross. This general's background is not small. He has been committed to the development of super soldier serum, so he is particularly concerned about the protective umbrella and actively requests to personally command the battle. General, our troops have cleared all the armed forces outside the Raccoon City base. Their base is under the square. The adjutant pointed at the light curtain in front of him. Well done, what's going on with this bunch of containers? General Ross was a little confused. Although he knew that Umbrella was engaged in the development of biological weapons, he had not seen these things in action so far. We are still collecting information. Should we recycle these containers? Maybe they are their special weapons. Haha, no problem. General Ross curled his lips nonchalantly. Boys, dig out these rats. With an order, the tanks and armored vehicles surrounding the container will continue to move forward, and the assisting infantrymen will also follow carefully. At this moment, the container opened with a bang. Hundreds of 3-meter-tall giants stood majestically in front of the convoy. They all have bald heads, huge amounts of machine cannons mounted on their arms, their upper bodies are bare, and their skin is grey, making them extremely intimidating. Hey? This is... General Ross was stunned for a moment, and then his expression changed drastically. Fire immediately, that's a tyrant. General Ross also had some knowledge of the biological weapons developed by Umbrella before he came, so he naturally knew about the existence of these guys. Tyrant should be said to be the proud work of Umbrella. He has no sense of pain, is not afraid of death, has rough skin and thick flesh, and can easily smash tanks and vehicles to pieces when attacking together. However, he was still slow to respond. I saw the group of tyrants jumping up together and slapping the tank in front of them. Boom! A tank had no time to react and was overturned by several tyrants. Fire! Damn it! The frontline commanders hurriedly gave orders, but the tanks and vehicles like steel city walls now became their shackles. The soldiers with guns raised desperately tried to avoid the tanks that were smashed by the giants, and the wailing sounds were endless. The tanks in front of the tyrants were beaten to pieces. These tyrants were extremely powerful and fearless of life and death. Even if half of their bodies were blown away by the tanks, they could still stand up. The United States military is, after all, the strongest military group on Earth. The temporary rout did not disorient the soldiers. They quickly regrouped under the command and launched a counterattack. More than a dozen tyrants were instantly ignited by tanks and turned into rotten flesh. The other tyrants immediately picked up their machine guns and fired wildly at the soldiers. UBD, order the artillery positions to open fire and blow these ghosts to smithereens. General Ross snapped. A loud thunder-like sound came from the sky. The artillerymen opened fire. The piercing call passed through the air and exploded in the formation of the tyrants who were venting their anger. Just one round of artillery fire enveloped them all. When the smoke dissipated, there was only a pile of minced meat that exuded a foul odor and emitted smoke, many of which were still burning. However, not long after, a bunch of containers were delivered to the square again. This time, what jumped out of the container were a group of hairless monsters with thick knuckles that evolved into sharp claws. These monsters move like the wind, crossing the lines of fire and killing wantonly among the soldiers. I saw a strange tongue sticking out of their mouth parts, and with just a few breaths, it pierced the chests of dozens of soldiers. General Ross' pupil shrank. Liquor! Quick, all infantry retreat! Sir, these ghosts are too fast, we can't keep up. Back off, back off! The entire battlefield was in chaos. This group of lickers tore a big hole in the military's front line. They ignored the thick-skinned tanks and armored vehicles, and specifically targeted the infantry fighting in conjunction with the tanks. What's even worse is that another group of tyrants has appeared, and behind this group of tyrants, there is a group of black, ocean-like monsters. These monsters look 30% human-like and 70% ghost-like. They walk staggeringly, but their numbers are extremely terrifying. The tattered clothes, terrifying faces, and deafening roars scared the soldiers on the front line out of their wits. Because they look like they were completely human when they were alive. These soldiers had never seen such a terrifying existence before. The tyrants and lickers who protected the umbrella before were half human and half ghost. They dared to fight, but when they saw the zombies, they had no intention of resisting. It's simple. No one knows if being bitten by these guys will lead to the same thing. General, the data shows that the number of enemies is as high as 100,000. What kind of monster is this? General Ross was sweating profusely. How could a bullshit company man send out hundreds of thousands of troops in one go? No information on zombies has been collected, and Protective Umbrella would not be so foolish as to report such an extremely anti-human existence. Although these guys looked like rotten meat, the number really scared him. The battlefield situation changes again and again. These monsters followed Licker and Tyrant and rushed over at the risk of their lives. Help! I don't want to die. Medic, help me! Throughout the battlefield, screams could be heard endlessly, with broken limbs and splattered blood everywhere. These guys bite anyone they see. The soldiers opened fire and broke their hands and feet, but they could still lie down and continue to attack. This scared the soldiers out of their wits. How could they fight against such an enemy? Seeing that the situation was over, General Ross gritted his teeth and ordered the armored troops to retreat, and then ordered the Air Force to carry out carpet bombing. This is an extremely cruel decision. There were still a large number of infantrymen on the battlefield, and this decision was equivalent to letting them die in the bombing of their own people. The earth was shrouded in clouds of white mist like gas. Before the zombies on the ground had time to figure out what was going on, suddenly there was thunder and the earth trembled. Suddenly, hundreds of flame flowers the size of a basketball court file engulfed them, and the ground sparkled with fire. Violent explosions were heard endlessly, and houses near the zombie wave collapsed one after another. Broken reinforced concrete fell like a meteor shower, hitting the zombies mercilessly. The rancid black blood splashed everywhere, onto the shattered glass curtain wall, and flowed onto the torn asphalt road, like puddles of mud. The bodies of the zombies were burning in the flames, and they howled and were swallowed up by the flames. At this moment, it seemed as if the ancient god of fire had sent down divine punishment to kill all these miserable existences. Definitely, along with General Ross's own soldiers. General Ross is a white man, but his face is a bit darker than that of a black man at this moment. Retreat first. He clenched his fist tightly, and the veins on his hand were clearly visible. Nick Fury personally led the S.H.I.E.L.D. elite to the beautiful National Army position outside Raccoon City. After seeing the battle report, his heart felt extremely cold. Not to mention the huge number of enemies, they also possess many strange biological weapons. What's even worse is that they don't know how many such monsters there are in the enemy's base. In this kind of frontal battlefield, S.H.I.E.L.D. can't help at all. There are not many S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel, and they believe in a policy of elite soldiers. If we force the fight, it will only severely weaken SHIELD. General Ross frowned. Nick Fury, is there any way to solve this problem? Don't talk nonsense about tactical nuclear strikes. This is our own land. Nick Fury touched his bald head and sighed, yes, this is our own land, we can only ask for foreign aid. Chapter 23. General Ross knew who he was talking about. Zerg. When Nick Fury explained the existence of the Zerg to them, several military representatives considered taking a preemptive strike. But he was still stopped by Nick Fury. At least the Zerg have no intention of attacking humans now. Humans now know very little about their situation, so taking the initiative to attack is purely idiotic. Moreover, the Zerg Queen also said that she wanted to collect special genes. When the situation is unclear, it is a good thing to talk about it first. But cooperating with the Zerg will undoubtedly cost a lot of money. If the Queen is not satisfied, she probably won't even be interested in paying attention. But the current situation is really frozen. General Ross is really not sure he can win Raccoon City without the use of nuclear strikes. But with a nuclear strike, his role as a general would be over. General Ross thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, okay, contact the Zerg and see their conditions. Kerrigan, who was busy digesting what she had gained, was awakened by the ringing of the phone. 7 days had passed since she took over the New York base. She had been practicing in the hotel these days, and the school simply took a long vacation. Hearing the voice on the other end of the phone, she shook her head disdainfully. That's it. It's really embarrassing to swear that you can eat it, and then ask for it within 2 days. She thought for a moment, okay, Nick Fury, listen, the Zerg can go out, but after the protective umbrella, it will belong to the Zerg, how about it? Nick Fury's mouth twitched, you really have a big appetite. However, negotiation is a step-by-step process. Well, Your Majesty, this condition is very difficult. Can you lower it a little? Lower? What, is this condition too much? Kerrigan chuckled, now, you can only turn to me for help. Do you want to use nuclear weapons on your own land? Nick Fury's face twitched, you know so much. You also know that the Zerg are masters of genetic modification. Maybe we can reach many cooperations in the future. As long as you hand over your protection to me, I will allow the Zerg to conduct some research for you. How about that? Kerrigan tossed another date. Nick Fury's brows relaxed, please wait a moment. He covered his phone and asked General Ross in a low voice to clarify Kerrigan's conditions. General Ross gritted his teeth, promise her, but if the protective umbrella under the control of the Zerg engages in matters that endanger the interests of any beautiful country, we will show no mercy. Nick Fury has a weird look in his eyes. What is this, a threat? Do you really think that His Majesty is afraid of this threat? He just thought it was Rose's goodwill, so he didn't say anything and informed Kerrigan of the situation. Very well, now get the military and your people to withdraw from the area around Raccoon City. My army will be here soon. Stay away. Kerrigan showed a satisfied smile and hung up the phone. She had long expected that the military might be defeated, so she had sent the king insects to fly towards the various bases of the umbrella early. Now was the time to take action. Nick Fury and General Ross looked at each other, Stay away? Be there soon? What do you mean? When the two of them were a little curious, they heard the muttering of the soldiers on the side. What's going on? The radar shows that there are several giant unidentified flying objects approaching. The two were stunned for a moment, and then looked at the screen in front of the soldier. I don't know when dozens of giant weather balloons appeared in the sky. Those weather balloons were heading in the exact right direction, Raccoon City. When the weather balloons arrived over Raccoon City, their appearance began to change, revealing their prototypes. My lord! General Ross's eyes widened. Those are not weather balloons, but huge amounts of creatures. These creatures look strange, looking like big rubber balls, and there are many small holes on both sides of their bodies that are difficult to see clearly. Is this the Zerg army? General Ross stammered. I don't know, evacuate quickly, this place is about to become a battlefield. Nick Fury grabbed General Ross and rushed out of the command post. General Ross also reacted and quickly ordered the troops to retreat. Everyone exited Raccoon City and used drones to start checking the battlefield conditions. I saw those huge amounts of creatures beginning to descend. When they dropped to a height of 30 or 40 meters, countless black and grey tides began to flow out of the small holes. No, that's not the tide, it's countless swarms of insects. Their numbers are difficult to discern with the naked eye, as the swarms drop to the ground and move directly toward the base of the umbrella in Raccoon Town Center Plaza. The response from the umbrella side was also very fast. Although I don't know where these weird creatures came from, they are definitely not here for tourism. Another bunch of containers were delivered to the surface. The zombies howled and rushed out of the container, and the lickers and tyrants immediately attacked the insect swarm. Kerrigan, who was far away in New York, just glanced at it and ignored it. How could these pieces of meat be able to stop the Zerg army? A zombie grabbed the forelimbs of a springtail and opened its mouth to bite it, but it didn't even break the outer shell. It was directly beaten into two pieces by the springtail. The hydralisks shot out endless spikes, instantly dyeing the entire sky black. In just a few breaths, the lickers who were jumping among the springtails in search of fighters were nailed to the ground and drowned by the swarm of insects. In the Raccoon City umbrella base, a group of people were looking at the screen and sweating profusely. Where did these monsters come from? The tyrant troops can no longer hold back, and all the lickers have been wiped out. Quick, keep putting it out, the production department will go all out and put all the resources into it. Umbrella has its own cloning technology, so they were not worried about competing with the beautiful country before. As long as they had enough resources, they could produce countless armies. Their leader, Dr. Isaacs, had a very far-sighted vision. Develop viruses, clean up the world, and then let them dominate. Unexpectedly, before this great journey officially started, the military and S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered them and immediately started taking action. Without warning, all overseas bases were wiped out, and only the Raccoon City base remained in the beautiful country. But Dr. Isaacs did not give up. He was convinced that the military had nothing to do with them. If you can, use nuclear bombs to bomb us. Whoever dares to give orders will step down in protest. But he never expected that after repelling the military, these strange creatures would appear out of nowhere. These creatures are more terrifying than zombies. They have a hard shell. The machine cannon in the tyrant's hand can only make a clanging sound without even losing a layer of skin. They are fearless and their fangs and claws are more deadly than any known weapon. And the number is extremely huge. They are biological weapons countless times more powerful than the biological weapons developed by Umbrella. They are born for war. Outside Raccoon City, Nick Fury and General Ross looked at the battlefield on the screen, their lips and teeth were dry, and they just felt weak. If they really faced this kind of enemy, would they have the ability to resist? Quickly, collect as much information as possible on these Zerg races. Nick Fury reacted very quickly and whispered. General Ross glanced at him, and the two nodded in agreement. Chapter 24. The swarm doesn't care what onlookers think. Their speed is extremely fast and they are already rushing to the platform where the protective umbrella transmits biological weapons. Dr. Isaacs in the command room was shocked. Quickly, stop the transmission. If these monsters are allowed to get in along the transmission channel, we will be completely ruined. The panicked operator immediately stopped the transmission. The swarm of insects rushed to nothing, but immediately turned their attention to those biological weapons that were still alive. In just 3 minutes, all the biological weapons released by Raccoon City were wiped out. Nick Fury and others outside the battlefield were looking at the video data and thinking. Look, This 3-meter-tall Zerg just sprayed out spikes and killed a licker. This should be the Zerg's long-range attack unit. I just don't know if they are good at close combat. They fire its spikes are more terrifying than bullets, and even the indestructible tyrant was stabbed into quill. Nick Fury looked at the hydralisk on the image and said in a deep voice. We know nothing about the attack distance and attack interval of this Zerg. It seems that their spikes are endless and they have attacked nearly 10 times in a row. Are these really creatures? General Ross frowned. Sir, the Zerg are about to arrive at the Umbrella's transmission platform. The two were startled and immediately looked up. I saw densely packed Zerg crawling onto the transmission platform, trying to dig out the shell of this tortoise, but the shell material of the transmission platform was somewhat unusual, and the springtails scratched it for a long time without any response. This small Zerg seems to be the main melee attack unit of the Zerg. It is small in size, but very fast, not weaker than the licker. Nick's expressions became increasingly gloomy as the two of them analyzed. Springtails are only about 1 meter tall, but their ferocious faces and mouthparts indicate that they are extremely difficult to mess with, and their speed and strength cannot be underestimated. On the battlefield, when they saw that they could not dig the platform, all the springtails raised their heads and made strange sounds. Kerrigan's order was to fight quickly. It would definitely be too late to arrange worker bees to dig tunnels now, so the Zerg decided to change their tactics. Inside the Umbrella underground base. Looking at the helpless swarm of insects holding their shells on the screen, Dr. Isaac's expression softened and he said proudly, "Ha, these ghosts are hopeless." Others also felt relieved, "Just spend it." They are not afraid that you will spend it, but they are afraid that you will not spend it. As the base camp of Umbrella, the Raccoon City base has living supplies that can last for decades, so it is not afraid of fighting a protracted war. Monsters are monsters, they don't have our wisdom. It was the doctor's foresight that made him choose the hardest new cement as the material for the outer shell of the transmission platform. Yes, regardless of whether he is a monster or a military man, we will definitely win this battle. Everyone showered Isaacs with rainbow farts. Isaacs crossed his arms and looked proud, "Make me a cup of coffee. I want to see how long these monsters will scratch." The secretary enthusiastically handed over the coffee, and as soon as Isaacs took a sip, he spurted it out. "Wait, what are those monsters doing?" Dozens of springtails squatted above the outer layer at the command of the insect queen, while other Zerg races fed various corpses into their mouths. Soon the bodies of these springtails expanded rapidly and turned into cocoons. Then, the cocoon split open, and a Zerg with a swollen body and a fluid-filled tumor sac on its back was born. These Zerg were unable to walk quickly due to the tumor cysts on their bodies, but they quickly huddled into a ball and occupied the entire platform. The other Zerg quickly retreated to leave space. When the military, Umbrella and others were puzzled, these Zerg exploded. It really exploded. Green blood splashed everywhere, and the entire platform was instantly dyed green. The pungent smell of chemical gases rose into the sky, and the entire platform began to decay visibly to the naked eye. "Oh my god, they're corroding the outer plating." Everyone in the command room was shocked. Fury and the two outside the battlefield were also shocked. "Those Zerg blood is extremely corrosive. Sieti, we blasted the outer layer of the Umbrella platform for a long time and there was no movement, but a few small bugs corroded it completely. Under the self-destruction attack of those banelings, the outer coating of the Umbrella teleportation platform turned into a puddle of mud in a short time." Boom! The vibration was felt throughout the base. The Zerg attack again. The corroded shell can no longer resist their claws, and the outer plating will soon be completely dug through. Everyone could no longer remain optimistic and ran towards the escape tunnel screaming. The underground base has many advantages, including very good concealment and defensive capabilities. But once the defense is penetrated, it becomes a complete coffin. Bang! With a bang, the shell was broken. Countless insect swarms flapped their wings and filed in from the penetrated shell. These insects screamed excitedly, venting their desire to kill. The Zerg were originally born to kill and evolve, but in this world, Kerrigan has been suppressing their nature. Today, they can kill happily. The screaming insect swarms trampled the entire base, using the corrosive liquid in their mouths to break through the alloy door. Countless insect swarms got into the door, tearing apart people's flesh as they screamed. The security personnel who also had umbrellas roared and opened fire, trying to kill these monsters. But in front of the power of the Zerg, these special forces are as ridiculous as urchins. Neither steel nor flesh is a single enemy against these Zerg. On the ground, a dense swarm of insects covered the entire base platform, wrapping them so tightly that it made people's scalp numb. The first layer of the protective umbrella was quickly breached. The building shuddered and roared, like the screams of a dying man. Bang! The steel gate was torn to pieces by the swarm of insects, and pieces as large as file-sized were scattered in the passage, becoming inconspicuous construction debris. It bloomed with its last brilliance in the passage and then disappeared. Then comes the second floor, the third floor. Doctor, I can't hold it anymore, leave now. The deputy reported in a panic that at this moment, the insect swarm had completely submerged the base and would soon reach the escape channel. Isaacs jumped into the escape tunnel in a panic. As long as he walked out of the tunnel, he could get on the long-awaited new fighter jet and leave. After getting on the fighter plane, Isaac slapped the door fiercely. One day, I will take revenge. Definitely, Doctor, we still have some hidden safe houses overseas. Let's avoid the limelight first. The deputy hurriedly closed the hatch and heard a boom overhead. No, it's impossible, how could it be so fast? Isaacs was shocked, how could those ghosts break through the defense above the escape area? Take off quickly, the deputy shouted. The flight attendant was sweating profusely as he prepared to take off. Kong! There was a soft sound, half of his body was pierced by spikes, and the plane instantly lost control. It's the hydralisks. The hydralisks spit out countless spikes, and the plane turned into a quill and fell straight down. Poor Isaacs, his dream was snuffed out before it even began. Queen, we have completely cleared the guards of this base. Many humans have surrendered. Do you want to kill them? The insect queen asked through the psychic network. Well done, get ready to retreat. It's ours, and they don't dare not give it to us. The military has suffered so many casualties, so we still have to give us the benefits we deserve. Kerrigan stroked her hair and stretched out comfortably in the bathtub. Clean up the battlefield before leaving. Don't leave anything behind that shouldn't be left behind. As you command, Queen. The insect queen naturally understood what Kerrigan meant. Although the swarm of insects defeated the protective umbrella, they themselves were also somewhat damaged. If they could not leave the information of the worms to humans, they would never leave it. Kerrigan put on a towel and walked out of the bathroom, ready to pick out new clothes that would show her majesty. Now that the matter is settled, it's time to share the cake. She will definitely face the military in S.H.I.E.L.D. in the most majestic manner. Sir, those Zerg have retreated. A soldier pointed at the landing king insect. The Zerg all got into the small hole in the body of the king insect, and soon flew back into the sky, disappearing disguised as weather balloons. Nick Fury touched his bald head and sighed, I really don't know if we are seeking skin from a tiger. Don't worry about it for now. Since the insect swarm has retreated, it should leave some clues. We must collect as many clues as possible. At least when that day comes, we will have the ability to resist. General Ross said solemnly. In his heart, he longed for the super soldier program even more. But, can super soldiers really fight against the Zerg? Ross didn't want to think about it, and didn't dare to think about it. When the heavily armed soldiers walked into the Raccoon City base, they saw only a messy battlefield. Before the Zerg left, they took a portion of all the samples with them. Those who surrendered were all locked in a relatively well-preserved room and filled to the brim. Did you find anything? Nick Fury said in a deep voice. Sir, the Zerg have cleaned up the battlefield. We didn't get any Zerg genes. We only got some useless spikes, but these spikes have basically no research value. They are more like human fingernails, full of cuticles. Phil Coulson looked bitter. All right. Nick Fury nodded helplessly. This time, they really had Chen Rui sit in the electric chair and lose their shit. Chapter 25. It has been 5 days since the Raccoon City incident. S.H.I.E.L.D. finally settled the matter and proactively contacted Kerrigan to ask her to accept the Umbrella legacy. Kerrigan readily agreed. She arrived at the S.H.I.E.L.D. building and watched the agents running around with interest. Agent Phil Coulson on the side laughed, Your Majesty, are you interested in humans? One thing is that after I came to this world, I immediately read through your history. You humans are really complex creatures. Good and evil, brave and cowardly, kind and cruel can coexist perfectly. I have to say that you are really a kind of complex creature. A contradictory creature. Kerrigan chuckled. Today, she was dressed extremely solemnly. At first glance, she looked like a powerful king. Phil Coulson did not dare to look directly into her eyes. Your knowledge is relevant today. Phil Coulson also doesn't deny Kerrigan's point of view. We humans are such a collection of contradictions, but I believe that in the hearts of most humans, kindness and protection prevail. This is also the meaning of our S.H.I.E.L.D. existence. Kerrigan's eyes looked a little strange. Now S.H.I.E.L.D. has almost turned into serpentine and shield. How dare you tell me that you are here for protection? But Phil Coulson was indeed a good man. In Kerrigan's previous life, many Marvel fans were extremely sorry for his death. Maybe, but Phil Coulson, watch your back. Kerrigan said calmly. She has noticed that several eyes are looking at her with scrutiny and doubt. There's something wrong with these guys. Because the passive ability dominates the charm, basically all creatures will not become hostile when facing Kerrigan, unless they are brainwashed and have their cognition modified. Along the way Kerrigan walked, most of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents were curious and amazed, but these guys with strange eyes were naturally shining like beacons in the dark night. Kerrigan shook her hand slightly, and several mimic bugs silently emerged from her sleeves and crawled towards those guys. Phil Coulson was a little confused and didn't understand what Kerrigan meant. But he didn't think much about it because he had already arrived. Nick Fury greeted him with a smile, bowed his head and performed a standard aristocratic etiquette. It's an honor to have you as our guest at S.H.I.E.L.D., Your Majesty. Nick Fury, seeing you so polite makes me really uncomfortable. Kerrigan chuckled, are they here? The military representatives have been waiting for a long time. Please come in. Nick Fury smiled and led Kerrigan closer to the reception room. The two sat down, and Phil Coulson immediately closed the door and stood guard at the door. Nick Fury pressed the red button under the table in front of Kerrigan. Immediately, several virtual images appeared in front of Kerrigan. It is an honor to meet you, Your Majesty. I am one of the military representatives, Thaddeus E. Ross. May you live a long and healthy life, Your Majesty. I am one of the military representatives, Kane Cedes. Images of several military representatives stood up and saluted. Kerrigan returned the greeting slightly, not surprised that these people weren't there in person. They know very little about the Zerg. If the high-level officials showed up collectively and were caught in one fell swoop, the military would have great fun. Okay, let's get straight to the point. Kerrigan threw out a document. This is the umbrella modification plan that Mary Jane made for her in the past 2 days. Mary Jane was originally going to come this time, but Kerrigan considered that Mary Jane's allegiance to the Zerg would be widely publicized, which would be very troublesome. I didn't bring her here. Nick Fury browsed the document at a glance, his face sank slightly, and he pushed the document in front of the virtual image and opened it one by one. BA Department, in a dormitory for workers in a rural beverage factory. Unlike other workers' messy dormitories, this dormitory is extremely neat and tidy, and even has a sense of tranquility and tranquility. The tall man was sitting cross-legged on the bed meditating. After a long time, he opened his eyes, looked at the heart rate monitor on his wrist, and breathed a sigh of relief. Getting out of bed, the man started writing. 147 days have passed since the last transformation. He is not angry and is in good condition. After closing the book, the signature column clearly read, Robert Bruce Banner. Banner got up and prepared to take a shower. I have to go to work in the afternoon to make money, and that's how it is in this hellish place called Basie. You'll be covered in stinky sweat after just sitting for a while. Under the nozzle, Banner thought about his own experience again. Once upon a time, he was a well-known scientist, had no worries about food and clothing, and had a girlfriend whom he loved deeply. But because of an accident, he turned into that monster. Hulk. This is what the monster calls himself. Transforming into Hulk, he destroyed everything about himself. Banner was hunted down by the military, escaped from the beautiful country in embarrassment, and hid in Pakistan. A dignified scientist could only work as a beverage factory worker in such a remote rural area, which made him quite desperate. But in order not to hurt his girlfriend Betty, he could only do this. Hulk is an extremely terrifying existence, with immense strength. Not only can he easily overturn tanks weighing more than 10 tons, but he also has terrifying defensive power. In addition to easily losing his mind when transforming, he is an absolutely perfect war weapon. Betty's father, General Ross, hunted Banner everywhere, and Banner had to hide. In Basie, he asked others for advice on how to control his anger, and successfully found a strange flower to suppress the Hulk in his body. But he didn't know how long he could control it, because he could feel that Hulk's anger was accumulating in repression, and one day it would erupt like a volcano. Banner has no other choice. AS.H.I.E.L.D. agent hurried into the office of former director Alexander Pierce. Alexander Pierce is a legend of SHIELD. He is Nick Fury's predecessor. After his retirement, Nick Fury invited him back as a consultant to SHIELD. At the same time, he also serves as the Minister of the World Security Council and maintains a good relationship with Nick Fury. Seeing the man coming in, Alexander Pierce's face darkened. "Didn't I say, don't come to my place unless there is an emergency?" The man's face was solemn. "Sir, how much do you know about the woman who came today?" Pierce narrowed his eyes. "Are you questioning me?" "Don't dare." Although the man said this, his expression remained as usual. Pierce could only suppress the anger in his heart. Although he is the highest commander placed by Hydra in SHIELD, Hydra also has backup personnel to keep an eye on him. The detective in front of him was one of the people staring at him. Pierce said calmly, "The woman's name is Kerrigan. Nick Fury hasn't told me more information yet. I will report it when there is new information." "Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt your work." The detective nodded and turned around to leave. He didn't notice, but a small bug hid in Pierce's office along his pants. On the other side, Kerrigan, who had just returned to the hotel, raised his eyebrows. "Interesting, Hydra is targeting me." Chapter 26. When it comes to what Marvel fans are most excited to talk about, Snake and S.H.I.E.L.D. is certainly an enduring delight. In the timeline of the Marvel Universe, S.H.I.E.L.D. looks like a great organization that protects the world at the beginning. The agents are all smart and capable, dedicating their light and heat to protecting the world. Then in Captain America 2, the audience was slapped hard. S.H.I.E.L.D. has actually been infiltrated by the sworn enemy Hydra. Even the former director Alexander Pierce is the high-level leader of Hydra. I have to say that this setting surprised many people at the time. Therefore, the name Snake Shield Bureau also spread. Kerrigan was a little surprised that she was being targeted, but wasn't worried. If these rats were waiting to die peacefully, she wouldn't care. If they dared to bar their teeth at her, Kerrigan wouldn't mind pulling their heads off to see if they could grow another head. "Colonel Emil Bronsky, your mission this time is to go to Pakistan to capture this person." General Ross handed the strong man in front of him a photo. The photo showed a gentle man wearing glasses and seemed to be a scientist. Bronsky nodded. Having worked for General Ross for many years, he would not be stupid enough to ask about the background of the target and then just arrest him. "Be safe, this man is very dangerous." As soon as General Ross finished speaking, Bronsky saluted and left. General Ross frowned and could only hope that everything went well. It seems to be good luck. 2 days ago, an old man bought a bottle of soda from Pakistan and felt full of energy. The military received the news and recovered the bottle of soda, and analyzed that the soda contained Hulk's genes. So General Ross sent out his capable generals without saying a word, preparing to capture Bruce Banner. The world is becoming increasingly unstable, and the military desperately needs stronger power. The far North Pole. A giant weather balloon is flying slowly along the airflow over the North Pole. But inside the weather balloon, there is a different cave, where countless Zerg species are sleeping. It turns out that this is a king insect disguised as a weather balloon. The king insects obey Kerrigan's orders and float around the world, watching for changes in the world at any time. Although the king bugs are extremely tolerant to the environment, the cold weather in the Arctic still makes them a little uncomfortable. They have to consume a lot of resources to keep the inside of their bodies warm to prevent the bugs from freezing to death. There is no way, the bugs are not cold resistant, but Kerrigan still transformed these Zerg in advance, at least giving them the ability to go into the water to catch food. Although it did not last long, at least they would not starve to death on the vast sea. An insect queen slowly woke up. She received a message from the king insect that her resources were running low and she needed to add some food. The queen immediately awakened the other Zerg, preparing to wait for the king worm to land and let the Zerg find some food. The king insect landed slowly, and the insect swarm braved the cold wind and jumped into the cold and biting sea water in search of food. A springtail that had just dived into the sea suddenly discovered a huge thing frozen in the ice in front of it. It notified the queen of worms without any hesitation. The ice was forcibly moved out of the sea by the Zerg. The insect queen looked at the huge steel creation in the ice and was quite surprised, because she could feel that there was still the breath of life in this steel creation. Crack these ice cubes. The swarm of insects swarmed up, broke the ice, and dragged out the steel creation. The insect queen walked into the steel creation and found that there was another human being frozen in ice. This human was dressed a little funny, wearing a red, blue, and white combat uniform, and holding a round shield in his hand. And the breath of life is in this human being. It really amazes me. How did this human being retain the breath of life even though he was frozen? The insect queen was confused, but quickly passed the news to Kerrigan. Kerrigan, who had just finished training, was stunned for a moment, then chuckled. I didn't expect that the swarm of insects unexpectedly discovered Captain America, collected a copy of his genes, and sent me the coordinates to keep him intact. Just throw him back into the ice, this guy is not the one we need. As you command, Queen. After receiving the order, the insect queen took action. After collecting Captain America's blood sample, she returned to the king insect's body with the swarm of insects that had finished eating, and flew away without looking back. Kerrigan tapped the table lightly, thinking about how to use Captain America's news to add another touch to SHIELD. Although the umbrella now belongs to her, Kerrigan has no intention of letting the umbrella become another insect nest of the Zerg. Plans to select an agent to promote the new umbrella company into human society. Only in this way will she not be hostile to all humans when the Zerg are truly exposed in the future. Humanity prides itself on being the leader of all spirits. The sudden emergence of the Zerg, the only intelligent creature on this planet, will definitely cause a lot of panic. If Kerrigan doesn't plan ahead, a group attack will definitely happen. Kerrigan, who was once a human, understands human thoughts very well. Nick Fury is listening to Phil Coulson's report with a dark face. Very early on, he asked Phil Coulson to send people to find the legendary figure from World War II, the superhero Captain America. This legendary figure was taken to the North Pole by plane and disappeared when he raided Hydra's base in World War II. Nick Fury thought he was not dead yet, so he wanted to bring him back and wake him up to deal with the increasingly difficult situation. Nick Fury had a new plan in mind. Originally, he planned to invite Iron Man Tony Stark to join this project, so that he could help him develop a special drug to inhibit palladium poisoning. Unexpectedly, the Queen of the Zerg Kerrigan solved this problem first. Now Tony is very interested in SHIELD. But he doesn't like it. After all, they are spying on him. This makes Tony, who is arrogant, look good to Nick Fury. Now, the people who went to the North Pole to look for Captain America are also in trouble. The North Pole is so big, and finding a person who may be frozen in ice is tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack. Keep checking. Nick Fury waved and Phil Coulson turned and left. Fury rubbed his brows tiredly. The messy things these days had really made him mentally exhausted. If he hadn't been bald, his hair might have turned white by now. Jingle bell. The phone in front of me suddenly rang. Which one? Nick Fury, would you be interested in doing some business? The voice on the other end of the phone was a little lazy and careless. But Nick Fury only felt cold in his heart. Bleeding profusely again. Palestinian, Hazanian ghetto. Bruce Banner quickly packed his luggage and rushed out of the dormitory. As someone who could escape the pursuit of the beautiful country's military, he was keenly aware that he was being targeted. He quickly thought that he might have been accidentally injured before and his blood fell into the drink bottle before he was discovered. Just now, he saw someone holding his portrait and asking questions, so he packed his luggage without any hesitation and prepared to run away. He wanted to return to the beautiful country to get back the body data he had stored, and by the way, he found the netizen Dr. Land to solve the problem. Hulk's problem. Not long after Banner left, a group of heavily armed soldiers rushed into his dormitory, only to find that the building was already empty. Bronski frowned, "You haven't run far yet, let me chase you." Soldiers scattered in the area immediately began searching. Banner carried the package, cleverly avoided the sight of the interrogators, and prepared to run towards the port. But unfortunately, he was still discovered, and Banner could only turn around and run away. The soldiers followed immediately. With his familiarity with the terrain, he temporarily got rid of the pursuers and looked at the direction. Banner was about to change to a smaller path. At this moment, several figures stopped in front of him. The leading man is a bald man with colorful tattoos on his arms. The bald man walked up to Banner and patted his face. "UBD, you just ruined my good deeds, now I want to teach you a lesson." If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you're notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.